Good afternoon, everyone. The committee is meeting to begin consideration of the 2023-2024 estimates of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities for a total of 3 hours this afternoon. The Ministry is required to monitor the proceedings for any questions or issues that the Ministry undertakes to address. I trust that the Deputy Minister has arranged to have the hearings closely monitored with respect to questions raised so that the Ministry can respond accordingly. If you wish, you may verify the questions and issues being tracked by our research officer at the end of your appearance today. Are there any questions before we start? Great. I now call the vote 3001, which sets the review process in motion. We'll begin with a 20-minute statement, no longer than 20 minutes, from the Minister of Colleges and Universities. The remaining time will be allocated for questions and answers in rotations of 20 minutes for the official opposition members, 10 minutes for the independent members, and 20 minutes for the government members of the committee. Minister, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. As Minister of Colleges and Universities, I'm here to talk about and provide more detail on our government's investments in the post-secondary education and research sectors. It goes without saying that the last few years have presented a magnitude of challenges across all sectors and industries. Now more than ever, it's critical that students can continue to access high-quality post-secondary education right here in Ontario. And my top priority as minister, and frankly as a mother of 3 post-secondary age daughters, one of which studies here in Ontario, is ensuring that our students know that they can rely on our post-secondary system to support them throughout their educational journeys and help position them for success as they move into the workforce. Because we all know, as a key part of our province's social and economic fabric, our colleges, universities, private institutions, and Indigenous institutes play a pivotal role in contributing to the overall strength and health of our communities. Now, during my tenure as Minister of Colleges and Universities, I've had the privilege of visiting dozens of post-secondary institutions and research institutes across the province. And it's incredible to see firsthand how they're fostering vibrant learning environments for learners that spur new ideas and promote valuable innovation that not only contribute to our overall economic growth, but also allow Ontario to compete on the global stage. And looking ahead, my ministry will continue to build on the groundwork we've laid over the past year, and really since 2018, to support Ontario's post-secondary education and research sectors, and most importantly, our greatest asset, the people of this province, to the benefit of students, employers, and the economy as a whole. In a nutshell, our vision is this: by removing barriers to post-secondary education at all points of a learner's journey, we can prepare students for in-demand jobs, which in turn will support a strong Ontario workforce across all sectors positioned for economic growth. To build on our track record of success, we recognize the importance of continuing to engage with students, families, employers, and post-secondary institutions to understand where support is needed the most and how we as a government can best help. We are constantly listening, adapting, and taking action. For example, just last week, I was at the Université de l'Ontario Français to announce that the province is expanding French language teacher education. We heard directly from the Francophone community that there is a critical need to train more French language teachers. They are especially needed in Toronto and the eastern part of this province. That's why we're funding a combined 110 additional French language teacher education spaces at Université de l'Ontario Français and the University of Ottawa for this current academic year, with the invaluable support of the Government of Canada. This is just one example of how our government is taking action that aligns with our strong vision for post-secondary education and keeps our students front and center. Today, I would like to speak to you about some of the other key investments my ministry is making to ensure students can continue to access high-quality education, make an immediate impact with employers, and contribute to the strength of the Ontario economy. As with most things in life, that all starts with a strong foundation. And for my ministry in particular, that means ensuring our sector is built on solid ground so that it can continue to support learners now and into the future, at each stage of their educational journey. Students, their families, and the taxpayers of Ontario deserve to know that when their hard-earned dollars are invested into Ontario's post-secondary system, their investment will pay off. That's why earlier this year, we announced the creation of a Blue Ribbon panel made up of experts and leaders from the business and academic communities. This panel will provide our government with advice and recommendations on actions Ontario can take to protect and grow our post-secondary education system so learners can continue to get the skills and education they need for the jobs of today and tomorrow. I'm pleased to report that research and consultations with key stakeholders is now complete, and we're expecting the panel's final report in the coming weeks. My colleague, Deputy Minister Way, will provide more details shortly about the focus of the Blue Ribbon panel's work, but I'm confident that their findings will help ensure Ontario's post-secondary sector remains sustainable for years to come so students can continue to access a high-quality education. Access is a critical word here because financial institutions can easily be the first and most challenging hurdle for a student to step foot into a classroom. On that note, I'm proud to say we are continuing a general freeze on tuition for the 2023-24 year for most Ontario students. This builds on our province's historic 10% reduction in 2019-2020, along with tuition freezes over the past 3 years. Prior to 2019, Ontario had the highest tuition fees for undergraduate and graduate programs in all of Canada. But now our average tuition has dropped into the 4th highest in Canada for undergraduate students and the 3rd highest for graduate students. In fact, when we first introduced the tuition reduction, students were provided with a relief of about $450 million annually when compared to tuition costs in 2018-2019. That's an impressive global number, but when we break it down, what it really means is that more students have been able to access their post-secondary journey. And because of that, I consider this an extremely worthwhile investment. I'm also proud to say my ministry is also moving the needle in a big way to ensure more students can pursue high-demand areas of study like healthcare. In both 2022 and 2023, our government announced an expansion of medical education, committing more than $193 million over the next 5 years. That first expansion was the largest in over a decade. In total, our investments will support 260 new undergraduate seats and 449 postgraduate positions, preparing the next generation of doctors to support our healthcare workforce. But I'm pleased to say we're not just stopping there. Our government is also investing $390 million over 3 years to train thousands of additional nurses and PSWs. This includes expansion of nursing and PSW programming at publicly assisted colleges and universities, as well as at 6 Indigenous institutes. Because not only is our healthcare workforce in need of more workers, there are also so many learners in Ontario who are passionate about a career in healthcare, whether as a first-time post-secondary student or as an established worker reskilling to change careers. I want more students to have the opportunity to pursue these programs of study and the rewarding careers that follow, ultimately ensuring our healthcare system has the qualified professionals needed to care for our parents, children, and neighbors, and to help build it up to be stronger, more resilient, and better than ever. And that begins with a solid foundation in education. On top of these key investments, we're continuing to think outside the box, identifying new ways to remove barriers to education and strengthen our workforce. For example, this very week, the first cohort of students benefiting from the Ontario Learn and Stay grant are starting their programs. This new grant is helping to add more healthcare professionals, specifically nurses, paramedics, and medical lab technologists, in certain underserved communities across the province. By thinking outside the box, this program provides students with full upfront funding for tuition, books, and other direct educational costs. And in return, students will commit to a term of service to work and care for people in the region where they studied after graduating. Interest in the Ontario Learn and Stay grant has been tremendous, with nearly double the number of expected students applying since the application was launched this spring. It confirms our belief that by removing barriers to education, in this case financial barriers, more students are eager and able to access post-secondary education to prepare for in-demand jobs. This is a historic investment in our students and in the future of our healthcare workforce, and one that I am extremely proud of. And importantly, we can see this investment is already working, with thousands of students starting their eligible program this semester. And I look forward to seeing the impact these students will have in underserved communities in the years to come. So I've talked about laying the foundation for a sustainable post-secondary sector and the progressive ways my ministry is helping to get students into the classroom. But as discussed, this is just the first step in our government's vision for post-secondary education in Ontario. Next, we have to ensure that students are gaining the skills and experience that allow them to successfully transition to the workforce or upskill to meet today's labor market demands. One way that we're doing this is by investing more than $32 million over the next 3 years to support over 6,500 research internships through MyTax, which is an organization that builds research partnerships between post-secondary institutions and industry. These partnerships or internships range widely in discipline, with support for key provincial priorities like critical minerals, manufacturing, and healthcare. And tying back to our government's vision, students and recent graduates gain experience in their area of study, and employers get access to a pipeline of skilled talent to support a strong workforce positioned for economic success. My ministry is also getting creative about how we support Ontario's workforce needs by investing in short-duration, labor market-specific education programs like microcredentials. In 2020, we announced Ontario's microcredential strategy, which has been supported with investments of over $60 million. This included a challenge fund to encourage post-secondary institutions and industry to work together to develop microcredentials that equip learners with the exact skills that employers need. This first round helped create up to 250 new microcredentials across the province, which are building skills in critical areas such as artificial intelligence, mental health, dementia care, and Indigenous relations. It was such a success that we're investing an additional $5 million to launch a second round of the Challenge Fund. This will support the creation of even more microcredentials that will help learners transition to the workforce or upskill to take the next step in rewarding careers. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a few moments today to share how Ontario's research sector fits into the big picture of my ministry's work and the economic strength of Ontario. We recognize that research is foundational to commercialization and innovation that will help grow our economy and attract and retain world-class talent in the province. Importantly, the work of our research sector strongly aligns with areas of focus for our government, including healthcare, agriculture, critical minerals, and electric vehicles. Over the last year alone, I've had the privilege of visiting several research organizations that our government is supporting, organizations that are creating tremendous job opportunities and growth. My colleague, Deputy Minister Way, will tell you more about our investments in the research sector shortly. But now that visiting facilities like the McMaster Nuclear Reactor with my fantastic PA, MP Pierre, whose work is enabling more research in clean energy and helping to treat conditions like heart disease and cancer, or touring the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, or SNO Lab for short, which is helping the province remain a leader in advanced science, technology, and innovation. Well, those are experiences that remind me Ontario is a true research powerhouse, bringing tangible benefits to the people of Ontario and our economy. I'd like to close today by reiterating that the Ministry of Colleges and Universities is committed to investing in our province's futures by continuing to do what is best for learners at all stages of their educational journey, and of course the taxpayer, while our colleges and universities begin the next phase of prosperity and excellence domestically and around the world. Our post-secondary institutions and research institutes are important sources of job creation, skills training, research innovation, and commercialization, making them leading contributors to our overall economic growth. and will continue to support the sector so learners can continue to get the skills and education they need for the jobs of today and tomorrow. And I would now like to pass over to my Deputy Minister, who will speak next. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here today to speak to this committee about the important work of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities.
Excuse me, Deputy Minister, could you just state your name and title for the answer? Thank you.
David Way, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities.
Speak up as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here today to speak to this committee about the important work of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. As Minister Dunlop noted, the post-secondary system is a critical part of the province's social and economic fabric, contributing to the economic growth, prosperity, and competitiveness. I joined this ministry just a few months ago, and I'm learning each and every day about the tremendous, innovative work happening at post-secondary institutions and research organizations in Ontario. But one thing that hasn't surprised me is learning that we truly have one of the best post-secondary education sectors in the world. The colleges, universities, private institutions, and Indigenous institutes located across our province provide students and job seekers with high-quality education, training, and skills, producing a talented and skilled workforce that contributes greatly to the health and wealth of Ontario. Knowing this, it's critical that we continue to remove barriers to post-secondary education and help students for in-demand jobs, as this will support an even stronger Ontario workforce positioned for further economic growth. The Ministry is committed to ensuring that the post-secondary sector in Ontario can continue to provide high-quality education to students for years to come. To make progress in this area, as Minister Dunlop mentioned, we launched a Blue Ribbon panel back in March, made up of experts from the academic and business communities. The panel will provide recommendations to the government on the financial sustainability of the post-secondary education sector over the long term and providing the best possible student experience. Considering the sheer size and diversity of Ontario's post-secondary sector, this is no simple task. But the panel has been consulting with key stakeholders and developing strategic recommendations for several months now with the following 5 principles in mind. First, enhancing student experience and access. Second, rewarding excellence and financial sustainability. Third, improving labor market alignment. Fourth, promoting economic growth and prosperity. And fifth, keeping education affordable for lower and middle income families. I know the Minister very much looks forward to receiving the panel's findings, which will help to further strengthen the foundation of Ontario's post-secondary sector. But while we wait for the panel's report to be delivered this fall, rest assured the Ministry continues to do important work to support the financial sustainability and effectiveness of our colleges, universities, Indigenous institutes, and research organizations. Financial sustainability remains a top priority for the government because we've seen firsthand what can happen if we don't take steps to ensure the health of the post-secondary sector. Members of this committee might be aware of the situation that occurred at Laurentian University, where the institution had to file for creditor protection in 2021. The Ministry has been helping Laurentian University chart a course for success so that it can continue to serve students, faculty, and the community. For example, we're acquiring real estate assets of a value of up to $53.5 million to help Laurentian implement its plan of arrangement. But it goes without saying, this is not a situation we want any of our other institutions to find themselves in. That's why the Ministry is implementing a new financial accountability framework for universities, informed by the recommendations of a third party and the Council of Ontario Universities. The framework allows the Ministry to monitor university financial health and define the respective roles of the Ministry and universities in addressing financial challenges. Identifying and addressing any emerging issues much earlier in the game will ultimately reduce the impact on students and their educational journey, and that is of paramount importance. Students should be able to focus on their studies and have confidence that their post-secondary institution can continue to provide the high-quality education they need to successfully transition to the workforce. As Minister Dunlop mentioned in her remarks, the Ministry's vision for the higher education in Ontario starts with removing barriers to post-secondary education, whether it's tackling financial barriers by increasing tuition costs, adding more seats to in-demand areas of study like medical education and nursing, or supporting new types of post-secondary education like micro-credentials to support lifetime learners Increasing access to post-secondary education is that first key step. But the next step, which is equally critical, is ensuring students are positioned for success after graduation. As such, the ministry is doing a lot of legwork to ensure students are graduating with skills that truly align
1 minute remaining.
with the labor market. Perhaps I'll close my remarks by reiterating that the post-secondary education sector and research sectors play a critical role in building a better and brighter future for families, workers, and businesses in Ontario. Through critical investments that are removing barriers to post-secondary education, helping learners successfully transition to rewarding careers, and strengthening the various talent pipelines into Ontario's workforce, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities is delivering on many key government priorities that are supporting students, addressing labor needs, and driving Ontario's economic growth and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Minister and Minister Dunlop. We will now begin question and answers in rotation of 20 minutes for the official opposition members, 10 minutes for the independent member, and 20 minutes for the government members for the remainder of the allotted time. How much time is left? For the deputy ministers, assistant deputy ministers, and ministry staff, there's 2 hours and 40 minutes left. Just FYI. For the deputy ministers, assistant deputy ministers, and ministry staff, please state your name and title each time that you are called on to speak so the proceedings can accurately be recorded and answered. As always, please remember to make your comments through the chair and lean into the mic. Today we're finding some issues with hearing. I'll start with the government members for the first round of questions for 20 minutes. MVP Pierre.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister. I'll start. Deputy Minister, did you have any further comments that you wanted to continue with, or had you had an opportunity to deliver your remarks?
I might follow Deputy Minister Way and Ministry of Colleges and Universities. Perhaps I might just follow on the research and innovation point that the Minister talked about. During Minister Dunlop's remarks, she mentioned the importance of the Ministry's research investments and how research at our post-secondary institutions can be a catalyst for innovation and commercialization. This can help position Ontario for economic growth, another key part of the Ministry's vision. I know Minister Dunlop has had the opportunity to visit many of the research institutes and facilities across Ontario during her time with the Ministry, and as I settle into my new role, I plan to do the same. But I immediately recognize the social and economic benefits investing in research brings to the people of Ontario and the strength of our workforce. As such, I'd like to highlight for you the newest investments the government announced as part of Budget 2023. There's a $6.8 million investment to support the expansion of the McMaster nuclear reactor, which is enabling more research in strategic areas like advanced materials, creating quality jobs in southwestern Ontario, and supporting advancements in healthcare to better treat our loved ones dealing with cancer and heart disease. There's also the $14 million investment to support and expand the operations of the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, or SNO Lab, which is located 2 kilometers below ground in Sudbury and is the deepest and cleanest lab in the world. Their research truly is critical, helping to ensure the province remains a leader in advanced science, technology, and innovation, and continues to be a jurisdiction of choice for scientific research in the field of fundamental physics. The government is also investing $5 million to create a Centre for Analytics at the Ontario Brain Institute, helping to transform the science discovered in labs into data and insights that are made accessible to the broader research community. In turn, that data can be used for early detection and treatment of brain disorders such as Alzheimer's or dementia. Thank you, MPP Pierre.
Thank you. And thank you, Minister, for your remarks and for being here today to discuss how the government is investing in post-secondary institutions, our system, and in our students. I know a lot of progress has been made on several initiatives within your ministry since the last time you appeared at estimates, especially given we're another year removed from the COVID pandemic, which means another year that students have been able to be back on campus, receiving the invaluable in-person hands-on learning that's so important. But we also know that careers and workforce needs are evolving as well, and as a result of the pandemic, that we need education to evolve alongside it. Our post-secondary institutions have done a fantastic job at adapting to the needs of students and employers, so ideally the government, or really your ministry, gives them the tools to be even more flexible than they already are. Something that you've spoken about on several occasions over the past year is the new Learn and Stay grant, an innovative initiative that's really changing the way we think about how and where we educate our young people, and in a way that really sets students up for rewarding and meaningful careers. So, Minister, can you tell us a bit more about the Learn and Stay program, how it's going so far, what you've seen through the process of its launch? I know we're had our first cohort start just last week, and perhaps what the next steps might look like for this program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, MPP Pierre. And to your point about the effects of the pandemic on the post-secondary education sector, Ontario saw an unprecedented shift across the sector from in-person learning to virtual learning, which became essential for delivering service and ensuring learning continued for students. And I must say I was incredibly impressed by the resiliency of our students, staff, and faculty, and the grace in the face of such challenges, because we know that shift wasn't easy, nor is it transition back to in-person learning. Over the last several months, I've had the pleasure of visiting many of our post-secondary institutions, where I saw firsthand students' excitement about being back on campus, hitting the ground running, to the in-person learning that they need after they graduate. And I was actually at TMU last week and talked to students during orientation week, so it's good to see that excitement back on campus, and not just for students, but also for faculty and staff. Something else the pandemic really brought to the forefront, not just in Ontario, but across Canada and around the world, were some of the current needs and future labor gaps in our healthcare system. And while the pandemic really highlighted our focus on how to improve nursing, medical education, and really post-secondary education as a whole, this work has been ongoing since before the pandemic began. What became quite clear was that more needed to be done, that we needed to strengthen the supply of healthcare professionals in every corner of the province, connecting them to better care experiences closer to home. And that starts with expanding high-caliber education for those on the front lines. I've been working closely with the Premier and the Minister of Health to ensure that we are not only fostering education for healthcare professionals, but that we are also addressing specific regional and community healthcare needs across the province, especially in this time of need. And that's where the Ontario Learn and Stay grant comes into play, which was designed to address the pressing need for qualified healthcare professionals in the communities that need them the most. Following significant work, I'm proud to say the Ontario Learn and Stay grant officially and successfully launched on May 16th of this year. This grant, which we've dedicated $61 million to, will be a game changer for students and communities across the province, increasing access to post-secondary education while also addressing local workforce needs, especially in underserved regions struggling to build and maintain their healthcare sector. It will provide eligible students with upfront funding to cover the costs of tuition, books, and other educational costs to post-secondary students who enroll in priority programs in regions that have been challenged by staffing shortages. And as important, they will commit to working locally when they graduate. This means that these students will graduate with no tuition debt, and if they work locally in their professions, if they continue to work locally in their professions after graduation. For the first year, the grant will focus on health human resources to help get skilled workers where they're needed the most, and will support first-year students entering eligible nursing, paramedic, and medical lab tech programs in Northern, Eastern, and Southwestern Ontario. In the simplest of terms, for example, if a student enrolls in an underserved community, takes one of the identified 4-year length programs of need, and commits to working in that community in their area of study for 2 years following graduation, our government will fully cover the upfront costs of their education. By providing targeted financial incentives to encourage students to learn and work in priority communities, the Learn and Stay grant will ensure that our healthcare professionals get the training they need to make immediate impacts in local hospitals, long-term care homes, and other healthcare facilities after they graduate. Let's look at the riding of Thunder Bay Atikokan, for example. Through the Ontario Learn and Stay grant, graduates of Confederation College's practical nursing program, Thunder Bay campus, will be able to make immediate impacts in local hospitals like Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre. This initiative is not only a career builder, but also a community builder. Not only are we giving students the training for in-demand fields in Ontario, we are also ensuring that communities across the province get the workers that they need to support their local labour market needs. And it's clear that young people are eager to start their healthcare careers, with over 4,441 students who have submitted applications for the 2023-24 academic year. A couple other examples I'd like to share. In Northern Ontario, 1,439 students have applied to eligible programs at eligible schools, like Cambrian College's paramedic program or Nipissing University's Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. These are students who can go on to work at St. Joseph Hospital in Sudbury or North Bay General Hospital in North Bay, and more within the region. In the East, 1,351 students are eager to attend eligible programs like Loyalist College's Bachelor or Bachelor of Science in Nursing and University of Ottawa's Master of Science Nursing, which will support healthcare needs for places such as Belleville General Hospital in Belleville and the Ottawa Hospital in Ottawa. And in the Southwest, 1,651 students will go on to support the local healthcare needs across the entire region, including through programs like St. Clair College's Medical Lab Technology, Medical Laboratory Sciences program, and one day potentially working at Windsor-Essex Community Health Centre. As we continue to prioritize a strong healthcare workforce in the years ahead, training the next generation of healthcare workers has never been more important. Looking ahead, as I mentioned, the program is designed to be responsive to evolving labour market needs and could be tailored for any program, profession, or region where there is an identified need. That means it may be expanded to include more programs and regions to help respond to localized labour market needs in underserved communities in Ontario. I'm confident Learn and Stay will have a huge impact on supporting local healthcare systems in every corner of the province, attracting and retaining the best and brightest students, and I can't wait to see the first round of graduates coming out of this program. And on an aside, I'd like to share, I was at a graduation, one of the high schools in my area, and I recognized one of the young ladies who was graduating from high school going into a nursing program at one of the identified areas. So I spotted her parents afterwards, and I went over and I said, "Has your daughter applied for Learn and Stay?" If she hasn't, but she actually had. So it was good to hear. And actually, one of our colleagues in the chamber, his daughter is attending University of Windsor in the fall, so has also applied to the Learn and Stay program. So it will benefit the students, the communities, and those local labour market needs.
MVP Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Minister and Deputy Minister, for all your work with our colleges and universities. The Learn and Stay program is a great program, I agree. Building our workforce is so very important, as well as providing all these great opportunities for our young people. So much appreciated. My question's around international students, and we've heard issues around housing, tuition, and recruitment. So I'd be interested in knowing the ministry's strategy relative to international students and what support we're offering them in our colleges and universities.
Well, thank you, MPP Jordan, for that question. Before I dive into some of the key issues, I want to stress that our government truly values those who come from around the world to study at our post-secondary institutions in Ontario. Not only do students who come to Ontario to further their education enhance our reputation as a leader in higher education globally, but they enrich the academic, social, and cultural well-being of campuses across the province. These are students who not only understand the value of an Ontario-based education, but they also see Ontario as a place that they want to build careers and even start a family. And we believe that all students have a critical role to play in fostering Ontario's future prosperity, and that our sector has a duty to ensure that the environment they provide for students creates the best possibility for them to succeed academically and socially. While Ontario boasts a solid reputation as a leading destination globally for students looking to receive a world-class education, I know we have faced some challenges when it comes to our international students. Challenges that I find concerning on both a professional level as a minister, but also on a personal level as a mother. And I can assure the committee, my top priority has always been and always remains providing all students with more and better learning opportunities, including providing adequate supports, every step of the way in their post-secondary journey to ensure that they have a smooth transition to Ontario, and taking the necessary steps to ensure they're protected throughout that journey from the early days of recruitment all the way to graduation. To be perfectly clear, our post-secondary institutions are autonomous, so matters like international recruitment, tuition, and enrollment are made at the sole discretion of each institution. But that being said, when it comes to tuition fees specifically, it's important to note that they are comparatively low to other international post-secondary institutions in comparable countries, including the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom. And when it comes to recruitment, all levels of government have a part to play in the future of our international students, from their safe entry into Ontario to creating conditions that make it easier for them to access post-secondary education. I'm sure we're all aware of the disturbing media reports that came out late last year highlighting the issues we're seeing with international student recruitment. International students come here to receive a world-class education, and they deserve to be free of the predatory treatment that has become far too common from bad actors. That's why last December, I wrote to Federal Minister Sean Fraser, who was Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship at the time, about the need for the federal government to step up to protect prospective international students and reduce the backlog on visa wait times. Not only has this led to talented students choosing other countries to pursue their education, but leaves those wanting to get to Ontario vulnerable to predatory marketing and recruiters from their home countries. On our part, our government is working hard to remove loopholes, improve oversight, and develop best practices to help ensure responsible international student recruitment. For example, we review and approve post-secondary education institutions seeking designated learning institution or DLI status under the International Student Program, which allows them to recruit and receive international students. Under the ISP, DLIs must demonstrate an honest and ethical approach to recruiting international students, and my ministry continues to work with partners, including the federal government, to review ISP requirements on an ongoing basis to ensure they reflect best practices. Additionally, under our public college-private partnerships, Minister's Binding Policy Directive, which was updated this past March, there is a new requirement for colleges to establish procedures to conduct regular reviews to ensure ethical international student recruitment practices with the goal of strengthening accountability. And Ontario is also doing its part through the incredible work of Colleges Ontario and Career Colleges Ontario, who have both developed standards of practice for international education to ensure their member organizations comply with ethical recruitment practices, advertising, and compliance and enforcement measures. This includes things like ensuring the marketing of programs to international students is accurate and transparent, requiring international agents working for Ontario's colleges to have completed a sector-endorsed agent training program, ensuring information on services, supports, and facilities are provided to students before they arrive in Ontario and once they are in the province, and providing targeted assistance to help international students adjust to a new environment. All signatory colleges are expected to adhere to these standards in their delivery of education of international students. And I must say I'm incredibly proud of our sector and how they continually set the standard for others to follow. While previous governments neglected international students, our government has supported them every step of the way in accessing high-quality post-secondary education right here in Ontario. And an increasingly important part of these efforts is student housing and supporting them while they study here in Ontario. Because students should be able to focus on their education and not have to worry about finding appropriate housing. Thanks to our government's policies, we have delivered historic results in getting more housing built faster and complement our more than $4.4 billion investment to grow and enhance community housing for vulnerable Ontarians and Indigenous people. In fact, last year, Ontario reached a 30-year record for new rental housing construction, the most units built in a single year since 1991. But addressing the housing crisis is a long-term strategy that requires long-term commitment and collaboration at all levels of government, stakeholders, and post-secondary institutions. I regularly engage with our schools and key stakeholders, and we are all committed to continuing to build on these partnerships to address the housing issue and to ensure students have proper access to housing. Publicly assisted colleges and universities in Ontario are responsible for their student housing, and Ontario universities have had a 10% increase in new resident spaces over the past 5 years. Over the past few months, I've visited several of our institutions who are doing fantastic work on getting shovels in the ground quickly on student housing. For example, earlier this summer, I visited Carleton University, where their president highlighted a new housing project currently under construction, which will house over 400 undergraduate students when completed. On our part, the Public College-Private Partnership Binding Policy Directive continues to place greater emphasis on ensuring adequate housing. Colleges must conduct consultations every 2 years with their local communities, including other post-secondary institutions and municipalities in which they have public college-private partnerships operating to ensure adequate community capacity to welcome international students. I'm also pleased to report this fall, together with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, we'll be hosting consultations with post-secondary institutions and key stakeholders to further discuss together and as a government how we can better understand how we can remove barriers and red tape and explore new opportunities to chart a solid path forward that will help build affordable student housing on and off campus for our students today and the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We now go to the official opposition, MPP Sattler.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the Minister and the Deputy Minister for joining the committee today. Minister, as you are well aware, per-student funding in Ontario is the lowest in the country. It has been that way for over decades. And we saw a report last week, which I'm sure you read, from HESA, which called Ontario's post-secondary funding abysmal. The report stated that on a per-student basis, the province funds universities at 57% of the average of the other 9 provinces, and on the college side, just 44% of the average of the other 9 provinces. So my question is the Minister proud of this record of being the lowest in the country? Does the Minister think that the lowest per-student funding is enabling Ontario colleges and universities to deliver high-quality education that our province has always been known for, and enabling students to access the post-secondary opportunities they deserve?
Well, thank you, MPP Sattler, for that question. And I'll start off with your final comment about access to post-secondary education, which is the most important, that all students are able to access post-secondary education in Ontario. In 2019, we decreased tuition by 10% in this province, and as I mentioned in my opening comments, Ontario had the highest tuition rates across Canada. We continued to freeze that rate until the 23-24 academic year because we want to ensure that everyone has access to post-secondary education. Before I turn it over to Deputy Way, I'll just give you a little bit of background on the operating funding for my ministry. In 2022-23, the government provided more than $5 billion in operating funding to the post-secondary sector. That would be $3.65 billion to universities and $1.38 billion to colleges. In 22-23, the government allocated $1.38 billion in operating grants to the college sector. And this was an increase of $74 million, or 6%, over 2008-2009 college transfer payments of $1.3 billion. As I mentioned with the universities in 2022-23, the government allocated $3.65 billion, and this was an increase of $500 million, or 16%, over the 2008-2009 transfer payments of $3.1 billion. So the province provides core operating funding for enrollment based on a corridor funding approach.
Okay, Thank you. But in comparison to the other provinces, Ontario remains the lowest in the country in terms of per student funding. And as you will also be aware, any increases that have been provided by the ministry have always been below the rate of inflation. So when you provide an increase that is below inflation, it is actually a cut, which is why Ontario has remained at the bottom of every other province in Canada. My next question, is there a plan to increase per student funding to at least the national average?
Thank you for the question, MPP Sattler. I'd like to mention about the Blue Ribbon panel that I also mentioned in my opening comments. So we announced the creation of a Blue Ribbon panel of experts to provide advice and recommendations for keeping the post-secondary education sector financially stable and focused on providing the best student experience possible. So this panel is made up of experts from the business and from the academic sectors as well. They've been working tirelessly all summer, and the consultations have finished at this time, and we are waiting for the report back, which should be coming in the next few weeks. So I know my ministry as well as our stakeholders are looking forward to those recommendations and moving forward and working together on the recommendations that come from that report.
Thank you, Minister. A lot of the instability in the post-secondary sector was actually introduced. It was triggered by the tuition reduction and subsequent freeze that your government implemented in 2019. And certainly the sector, colleges and universities immediately raised concerns about the impact this is going to have on the long-term financial sustainability of the sector. They've continued to raise those concerns. 4 years later, it's important that this Blue Ribbon panel has been struck, but my question is, why did the government wait so long to do anything to acknowledge these concerns? And also related to that, why were current students, staff, and faculty excluded from direct representation on the Blue Ribbon panel?
Thank you for the question, MPP Sattler. And it sounds like you were actually in favor of having the highest tuition in Canada, and were against a tuition cut and substantial continued freeze. I heard from students, from families, they were in favor of a tuition cut and continued the freeze. The Blue Ribbon panel, as I mentioned, has been working all summer across the sector. They've heard consultations with many of the post-secondary institutions. Also submissions were made. We actually have one of our members was a former president from USA, the Undergraduate Student Alliance. So we have great representation on that panel, many experts from across the field, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations that will be coming shortly.
I'm going to have more questions specific to student financial aid and student tuition, but at this time I just want to stay on the underfunding of the sector. We heard from the Financial Accountability Officer in the Q4 expenditure monitor that the government is not even spending the limited dollars that it is allocating. The government underspent on its original 22-23 plan by $392 million. So can you explain to us, given the concerns about financial sustainability in the sector that we have been hearing about for years, and the lowest per student funding in the province, can you explain why budgeted money was not spent on colleges and universities?
Well, I'm going to turn that question over to my deputy.
Sure. So, Deputy Minister David Way, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Colleges and Universities. The 23-24 expenditure estimates set out by the Ministry's operating capital spending requirements constitute our formal request to the Legislature for their approval. The allocation for 23-24 is $12.114.8 million. This is an increase of $1.314 million from 22-23 and represents a 12% increase relative to 22-23.
2022-23 budget, which was underspent by $392 million.
So I'll ask my ADM, Kelly Shields, to come up and provide some color on that 22-23 information. I will, just while she's coming up, I will suggest that, I will describe what was in the difference between the estimates between 22 and 23 and 23-24. There is an $155 million change related to an increase in grants, $101 million related to grants and operating.
About the money that the FAO found was underspent in the 22-23 plan. But I'm going to move on now to OSAP and student access. The estimates this year say that there's going to be a 1.9% increase in student financial aid, as you just mentioned. But as we all know, that is well below inflation, so that is not an increase, that is a cut. My question, why is your ministry effectively reducing financial assistance for students to attend colleges and universities?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Sattler. Let me take it right back to the beginning. There was a tuition cut in 2019-2020 because Ontario's tuition was the highest in Canada. This was done in order to ensure that all students have access to education in Ontario. We continued the freeze on tuition until this 2023-24 school year. I might remind the member that OSAP is a needs-based program. We are making it affordable and accessible for everyone. We now also include micro-credentials are available for OSAP as well as Indigenous institutes and private career colleges. But what we're finding is that students aren't using the system. So it's not that we've cut anything, they're just not using the money that is available for them.
Students are struggling enormously with cost of living pressures that all Ontarians are experiencing. There was a recent study by RBC that said almost half of students aged 18 to 29 are going to be living at home with their parents. It was only a quarter of students in 2013. Almost half of students expect to graduate with up to $20,000 in debt, and that is an increase from just 30% in 2013. So we know that there is financial need. We also, going back to the FAO financial report, we also know that there was $141 million that was unspent in student financial assistance last year. So again, I'd like to ask the Minister, why was that money left on the table when there are thousands of students in this province who are struggling to get through college or university?
Well, thank you, MPP Sadler, for the question. And you made an interesting comment about students living at home. I don't see that as being a negative thing. In fact, the work that we've done with colleges, and I know we have President Dave Agnew here from Seneca College joining us today, the work that's being done to allow standalone nursing programs at Ontario's colleges, the work that's being done with 3-year degrees is so important and gives students the ability and access that they want to stay home and learn in their communities and meet the local labor market needs. That is an option for them. I'll just give you a few numbers before I send it to the Deputy to talk a little bit more about the grants versus loans. But in 2021-22 academic year, approximately $4.2 billion in student aid was issued through full-time OSAP. In the 2021-22 academic year, approximately 385,000 students received assistance through full-time OSAP. The average per student value of full-time OSAP assistance issued to students studying at different Ontario post-secondary institutions were as follows. Publicly assisted universities, $9,946. Publicly assisted colleges, $10,314. Private career colleges, $20,663. And other publicly funded and private institutions, $11,454. So 80% of Ontario assistance issued to full-time students was in the form of grants, while 54% of federal assistance was in the form of grants. I could ask the...
Last year, there were 160,000 students in this province that had to access the repayment assistance plan, which means that they had major difficulty repaying the student loans that they received. We know many of us have kids in our families who are still, struggling to repay OSAP loans. So my question related to OSAP loans is, can the minister tell us what portion of student loans are never recovered? There's 160,000 students who had to go to repayment assistance plan. We know that at some point, 7 years or 10 years, those loans are written off. So can you tell us what is the amount that is never recovered, and how much does the government spend in hunting down students to try to get them to repay loans that they are having great difficulty repaying?
All right, thank you for the question, MPP Sadler, and I will. I'll start off, but I'll ask my Deputy Minister and possibly an ADM to contribute as well. But for full-time OSAP, Canada and Ontario have a harmonized and integrated single student loan, and this means one payment and one repayment. For students who received loans from OSAP, the Ontario portion of the loans are interest-free during full-time studies. Interest accrues on students' provincial loan when they have ceased full-time studies. However, students have at least 6 months following the end of their studies before loan repayments are required. Terms of repayment are typically based on a period of 9.5 years, although borrowers have the option to renegotiate payments for up to 14.5 years. Average repayable debt for students who were in the final year of their program in 2020-21 was $21,322 for a 4-year university student, $13,127 for 2-year college students, and $14,790 for 1-year private career college students. The Student Loan Rehabilitation Program allows borrowers who have defaulted on the Ontario portion of their student loan to reestablish good standing through scheduled partial payments. The governments of Ontario and Canada offer assistance to student loan borrowers who are having difficulty repaying their loans through the repayment assistance plan. There are different eligibility criteria for federal and provincial repayment assistance programs, so students may qualify for different levels of assistance for their federal and provincial loans. Example, students may qualify for zero payment for their federal loan, but qualify for an affordable payment for their provincial loan.
Loan, my understanding is that once the interest-free period is over, the rates are prime plus 1%, which means that students who are repaying OSAP loans today are paying a rate of 8.2% interest. Can the minister tell us how much revenue is being generated for the provincial government based on the interest that they are earning from provincial student loans?
Well, I'm going to hand it over to my deputy to talk a bit about the grant portion of that first.
So I just wanted to be David Way, Deputy Minister of Ministry of Colleges and Universities. So just to be clear, I just remind the committee that 80% of Ontario funds is funded through grants as opposed to only 50% of federal assistance, which is through grants. So 80% is through grants, only 20% is through loans. I can ask ADM Anna Boyden to come forward and provide any further information around the cost for those loans.
Thank you, Deputy. Anna Boyden, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Advanced Education Learner Supports Division. With regards to the OSAP default rates and the Rapid Assistant Program usage rates, I can confirm since 2018-19 to present, we've actually seen a decline in the percentage of students uptaking these particular programs. In 2018-19, for the OSAP default rate, we saw 6.1% of students defaulting on loans after 2 years of repayment. In the most recent year we have completed, 2021 to 22, that number has dropped to 3.7%. On the repayment assistance program, confirming in 2018-19, we saw 36.3% of students adopting that program, whereas in the last year, 21-22, we saw that program's usage drop to 23%.
Okay, thank you. I want to go on to some of the changes that were introduced to OSAP eligibility with the tuition rate reduction in 2019. We have heard, as I'm sure the minister has heard from students, that the changes to OSAP that were made around eligibility, the financial criteria for eligibility have excluded many students in this province from accessing financial aid to attend post-secondary education. So my question is, what is the minister doing to ensure that OSAP actually enables students in financial need to access post-secondary education?
Well, thank you, MPP Sattler, for the question. The government observed an increase in the budgeted amounts for student financial assistance between 2022-23 and 23-24 as a result of an update to the OSAP forecast and additional funding for the Ontario Learn and Stay grant. The additional grant funding and revised expectations for OSAP are reflected by the following impacts to OSAP transfer payment expenses and loan portfolio, which have been reported in estimates. So $16.3 million increase for the Ontario Learn and Stay grant, $8.4 million net increase in student financial assistance funding related to previous updates to the OSAP forecast, and $21.5 million reduction in the operating asset. So just to remind all the members here today that we provide approximately $4.2 billion in student financial assistance to approximately 400,000 students every year. So this is a needs-based system. As I mentioned before, we have seen a decrease in the students accessing the OSAP, the program, but I want to thank, I was at the Ontario Colleges and Universities fairs last year and actually got to meet with the OSAP representatives from our office who were there firsthand talking with students and ensuring that they were helping them work through the system.
Thank you, Minister. We will now turn to the independent member for 10 minutes. MPP Hazel.
So as the housing crisis intensifies across Ontario, students are particularly impacted. We cannot expect our students to work full-time while doing university full-time. How does the government plan to ensure new university residents are built faster? I didn't hear an urgency for this crisis. It is a crisis, pointed out in your report. In my writing, Minister, there is landlords that are renting houses with 4 international students in 1 bedroom. And we have a lot of that through Scarborough. And are you aware that this is a crisis right now for international students coming into Canada?
Well, thank you, MPP Hazel, and very nice to meet you, and congratulations on being elected. I was actually in your riding just last week at the Scarborough campus, and this was we visited on the Wednesday, and the residence was opening on the Friday. So we were still wearing hard hats and work boots, and commotion everywhere where they were finishing up construction to welcome 750 students to that new residence on the Friday. So within a couple of days, these students would be arriving, and that would be doubling the capacity of the residents at the campus in your area. So incredible work that's being done across the province, and I'll just use that as one example because it is your riding. We know it's a housing crisis, not just with students, but across the province. That's why this government is working hard to build 1.5 million homes. But I look at what our sector is doing to step up to help alleviate the pressure on municipalities. Right now, we are undergoing consultations through the ministry with the sector, with colleges and universities, and those have been underway. I will also be hosting a Ministers' Roundtable coming up in September and October, where not only will we have colleges, universities, private career colleges at the table, but we'll also be hearing from municipalities because most of us just came back from AMO. That was a question that I had from most municipalities was, what about student housing? because everyone agrees having a campus in their region is a win-win for all. But we want to ensure there's adequate housing, because if there's not enough housing for students, then there's not enough housing for residents of the community. So, the work that I see across the colleges, the universities, private career colleges, this really is a priority for my sector, but not just my ministry, but for the stakeholders right now, to ensure that there is adequate housing on campus. And I can tell you from my time working at Georgian College prior to politics, I worked at the Aurelia campus, and there was a time where there wasn't student housing. And every open house in the spring, parents and students would come, and they'd visit, and they loved the campus, but the question that parents always asked was, where's the housing? Because we want to ensure, as parents sending our children off to university college campuses, that there is adequate and safe housing located on campus, especially with those first-year students. So, it's kind of a selling feature for campuses as well, to ensure that there's adequate housing. So we're working with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing on the consultations and as part of the Housing Supply Action Plan. So that is a priority for myself, for my stakeholders too, to ensure that not just only our domestic students, but international students who are coming here for the first time aren't having to worry about housing. So I'll admit, we all know there's a housing issue in this province. I hear in every region I visit, but it takes not just the provincial government, but all levels of government to step up. It really takes municipalities to ensure that housing projects that are underway or that are in the early stages by institutions, that they work with municipalities, and municipalities help to accelerate these types of housing. I'll give you two examples. The University of Toronto, I met with the president recently. They have a project underway that will hopefully open next year. This project has been 15 years in the making because of hold-ups from the municipality. And eventually went to LPAT. But these are our neighbors who are complaining about student housing, but this is housing for our future doctors and engineers, for the people who are going to work and run this province. Another example was at the University of Guelph. There was a housing opportunity on the street right across from the campus. So it was a private developer working in conjunction with the university, which we see happen in many areas, which is a great opportunity for institutions. But the council, everyone except one person, it was the mayor, voted against the student housing. So we can't have this happening. It has to be, if municipalities want campuses in their areas and they value that, then they really need to step up and be a partner working with the institutions to ensure that there is housing in that.
Well, thank you. I have another question to follow up because I only have 10 minutes. Following its bankruptcy, Laurentian University has shuttered 58 of its programs, including mathematics, environmental sciences, geography, and political sciences. Northern Ontarians deserve quality education, but many have been driven south because of the closure. Many of those students will stay in Toronto, and others are southern cities, a brain drain of the north. Does the minister view this as a problem, and how do they plan to address this situation?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And, we inherited a crisis with Laurentian University, and it was this government and this ministry that stepped up to ensure that Laurentian was able to successfully move forward, because it's not just about having access to education in the north for those students, but you think of the benefits to a university in an area for the community, but also for the local labor market needs, the different industries in the northern area. But having access to education is very important, and that's why we worked together across government to ensure that we were able to work with Laurentian to support them through that process, but to see them come out on the other side of it and be successful. As far as any cuts to programming, colleges and universities are autonomous institutions, so they make those decisions in the program offerings that are available. But we worked with them to ensure they were successful coming through the CCAA process.
And one more follow-up question. Similarly, the province denied to fund the University of Sudbury despite having a qualified business plan.
Chair, point of order, I believe.
The Ministry of Colleges and Universities doesn't fund the University of Sudbury, and so it should not be a part of today's conversation is
Okay.
strictly about estimates.
Okay, my last. York University has applied to open a medical school in Vaughan. Will the province move forward with this proposal? We need more doctors, of course, in our province, so why the wait?
Well, thank you for that question and acknowledging that, yes, we need more doctors. I know in my own community I could use some, and I'm sure around the table we all could. That's why this government had the large expansion of medical education in 10 years. So we originally announced 160 undergraduate and 295 postgraduate spaces, and then continued that expansion in the budget 2023, 100 undergraduate and 154 postgraduate spaces. So, we acknowledge that there is a lot of work to be done in training doctors and especially family medicine. We have committed to the new TMU medical school that will be built in Brampton, the U of T campus, Scarborough, so it looks like Scarborough's doing quite well. I have met with York University several times, and I know they've consulted with many different politicians across the area, but we're working with them, and I know they have brought a plan forward. So we want to see. Right now, we have TMU Brampton that will be starting shortly. So we have had that medical seat expansion across the province, and we'll continue working. And I'm proud to be a partner with York University and work through that process.
1 minute.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
I guess that concludes questions from the independent member. We will now move to the next round from our government members. MVP Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. My question is, both yourself and the Deputy Minister have spoken about research and innovation being an integral part of MCU and the many investments that have been made so far in this area. Can you expand some more on the research security and intellectual property protection that have been put in place?
Thank you for that question. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Our sector really does amazing work, and when it comes to research, with some of the best and brightest minds right here in Ontario. It is clear that Ontario is home to a world-class sector of researchers that continue to compete and thrive in the global economy, and they are crucial to the advancement of technologies and practices within education, health, and business. And their advancements make real differences in the lives of Ontarians. And I'm sure that we all agree our researchers cannot do it alone, and that is why our government has stepped up and become an active player in the Ontario research and data community. When it comes to funding research, our government continues to work with the post-secondary institutions and academic hospitals to support their research needs. To give you a better idea, the majority of these funds are divided into 3 competitive funding streams, all with specific and vastly different needs. The Early Researcher Award, the Ontario Research Fund Research Infrastructure, and the Ontario Research Fund Research Excellence. Since 2018, the Early Researcher Award has awarded over $25 million to help promising early career Ontario-based researchers build up their research teams while improving Ontario's ability to attract and retain the best and brightest research talent. Since 2018, the Ontario Research Fund Research Infrastructure has awarded over $334 million to ensure that Ontario's research infrastructure continues to be competitive, to engage in global research and development, and allows Ontario to leverage matching federal funding through the Canada Foundation for Innovation. The Ontario Research Fund Research Infrastructure comprises the Large Infrastructure Fund, the Small Infrastructure Fund, the College Fund, and the Biosciences Research Infrastructure Fund. The Large Infrastructure Fund helps cover the costs of building and renovating and equipping facilities to conduct large-scale collaborative academic research. The Small Research Fund helps cover the costs of acquiring and renewing research equipment. The College Fund provides Ontario colleges with state-of-the-art, industry-relevant research infrastructure to foster partnerships with the private, not-for-profit, or public sectors and support businesses and/or community-led innovation. and the Biosciences Research Infrastructure Fund is a one-time $16 million investment to help address the immediate infrastructure needs in post-secondary institutions and affiliated research hospitals' capacity to support pandemic preparedness and respond to emerging health threats. Finally, since 2018, the Ontario Research Fund Research Excellence has awarded over $238 million to support leading-edge, transformative, and internationally significant research of strategic value in Ontario. It also leverages federal funding with Genome Canada through the following 3 active programs, including Genomics Applied Partnership Program, Ontario Research Fund Interdisciplinary Challenge Teams, and Ontario Research Fund Genomics Hub. In addition to the competitive research programs, Ontario supports groundbreaking work at leading research institutes and university facilities across the province, many that I've seen firsthand upon touring institutions across the province. I'm happy to share that last academic year in 2022-23, our government invested $129.8 million to support groundbreaking work at leading research institutes and universities across the province. These investments include world-class research institutes, including Clinical Trials Ontario, Compute Ontario, Fields Institute for Research in Mathematical Sciences, the Ontario Brain Institute, Ontario Genomics, Ontario Institute for Cancer Research, Perimeter Institute, the Centre for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, Snow Lab, Vector Institute, and Advanced Research Computing facilities at 13 research institutions across the province. I had the privilege of visiting Snow Lab late last year, where I and a staff member were in awe of the incredible research being done almost 2 kilometers below the Earth's surface, just outside of Sudbury. Like Snow Lab, these institutions are completing research in crucial economic areas and areas that match our government's initiatives in healthcare, agriculture, critical minerals, and electric vehicles. And as announced in the 2023 budget, Ontario is investing $6.8 million in the McMaster Nuclear Reactor, Canada's largest nuclear research reactor and a world-leading supplier of medical isotopes used to treat cancer. Spread over 3 years, this funding will contribute to the university's $25 million project to optimize operations of the nuclear reactor to 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and increase the diversity and number of isotopes produced. I had the opportunity to tour the reactor just a few months ago with my colleague, Minister Todd Smith, Minister of Energy, and the work being done there is truly remarkable and game-changing. In addition to supporting our research community through investments in capacity and talent, applied research programs, and addressing research gaps, our government is committed to ensuring that investments made by Ontario tax dollars have a direct benefit to Ontario taxpayers. Thanks in no small part to our sector, Ontario is a leader in academic and research excellence in areas like life sciences and cancer research. And in today's global economy, the foundation of success and global competitiveness is the value of the ideas and intellectual property the sector is bringing to market. But for too long and across too many sectors, we've seen the benefits of ideas, innovations, and research generated in Ontario leave Ontario, and IP assets are commercialized somewhere else instead of creating value right here at home. Under the leadership of Peter Cowan at Intellectual Property Ontario, or IPON, it's finally on the path to become a world leader in not just research, but protecting and commercializing IP. Our government invested $58 million in 2020, over 3 years, into IPON, with MCU directly investing $7.2 million in 2022-23, and is set to receive $7.7 million in 23-24. And IPON has made great progress over the past 3 years and has selected 40 clients to work with across 4 priority groups, 12 clients from the medical technology sector, 11 clients from the automotive sector, 13 clients from the artificial intelligence sector, and 4 clients that are recipients of the Ontario Research Fund Research Excellence Award. IPON has made incredible progress and has onboarded and begun service delivery for all 40 clients and has already received positive client feedback for the approach to microcredentialing and basic education workshops. In addition to aiding their clients, IPON also launched a post-secondary education commercialization support program in February of this year to provide financial support to post-secondary institutions for pilot projects that will enhance post-secondary commercialization capacity and commercialization efforts. IPON received 23 proposals and selected 7 projects to fund, totaling $2 million to go directly to institutions to support hiring new staff, including full-time equivalents, and implement pilot projects. Institutions who have received funding for the remarkable proposals include Conestoga College, La Cité College, Durham College, Niagara College, Lambton College, York University, and a joint proposal led by University with Trent, Lakehead, and Nipissing Universities. In addition to these projects, IPON is supporting the ministry to implement the Commercialization Mandate Policy Framework. As a key pillar of the government's intellectual property action plan, the government introduced the Commercialization Mandate Policy Framework to help colleges and universities to be more intentional in their approach to IP management and commercialization, with a focus on ensuring Ontario-made innovations benefit Ontarians. IPON plays a pivotal role in advising the ministry on institutions' foundational commercialization policies and develops an annual sector report on the implementation of these policies. Along with the ministry, IPON also leads a joint working group to identify metrics that will help institutions demonstrate progress on achieving goals of their commercialization mandate. Overall, the future of intellectual property in Ontario is bright, thanks to this government's leadership. And as Ontario continues to be a global leader in research and intellectual property, our government is taking the necessary steps to ensure that the benefit of research undertaken in Ontario colleges, universities, academic hospitals, and research institutes is safeguarded from hostile actors. To that end, MCU has integrated security reviews developed in partnership with the Ministry of the Solicitor General into all of MCU's competitive research funding programs. Additionally, the ministry has held consultations with public universities and colleges to get a better understanding of what research security capabilities institutions possess and what guidance they are looking to from the ministry. Ontario's research programs and institutions are recognized globally for having a reputation of excellence, and we owe it to students to do everything we can to uphold that reputation. All across the province, our research institutes, hospitals, and of course, colleges and universities continue to push knowledge to its limits. And our government will protect taxpayers' dollars, promote Ontario-based research, and ensure that we continue to support an innovative environment that builds capacity, creates jobs, opportunity, and growth for our economy.
Thank you, Minister. MPP Quinn.
Thank you for the Minister for being here today. So my question's on campus safety. I know that is something that you and this government has taken very seriously over the years, but with the recent events at Waterloo over the summer, it bears bringing it up. Can you please tell us what you have done to support campus safety and hopefully what is yet to come to ensure our students, staff, and others on campuses across our province feel safe?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Quinn, and it's a very important one and really hits home for me on a professional and a personal level. I mentioned earlier I have 3 post-secondary age daughters. My youngest is actually just going into her 4th year here at Western. So there's nothing that's more important to me than the safety and well-being of our students and ensuring that they feel supported on and off campus. Off the top, I'd like to address the horrific incident that took place at the University of Waterloo this summer. No one should have to experience something like this when they pursue an education. All forms of violence have no place in our communities, on or off our campuses. And when I spoke to the president at Waterloo following the shocking incidents, I offered our government's support to the staff, faculty, and the student community. As Minister, I expect that our colleges, universities, Indigenous Institute partners have plans and supports in place to keep students and faculty safe, and that they frequently review safety and security measures to ensure the safety of students, faculty, staff, and visitors on their campuses is maintained. We all have a role to play to provide students and staff with a safe environment that is conducive to their education, and anything short of that is unacceptable. As a government, our priority is to support Ontario students and help them access high-quality education. Education that will help them develop the knowledge and skills that they need to get good-paying jobs and support the growth of our economy. But in order for students to flourish in post-secondary education and beyond, we first need to provide them with a solid foundation that fosters success. All students in Ontario deserve to learn in a healthy, safe, and respectful environment, one where they don't have to worry about discrimination or harassment while accessing an education, and an environment where there are supports in place that students can rely on when they need help. The safety and well-being of everyone on Ontario's campuses is a critical responsibility of our post-secondary institutions as autonomous entities. That said, our government will continue to have those ongoing discussions with our institutions on how we can take action to support them in their efforts. To help students feel safe on campuses, my ministry has developed several initiatives to put students first. This includes the Campus Safety Grant, a $6 million investment annually to help assist and support publicly assisted colleges and universities with campus safety programs like safe training, consent and healthy relationship workshops or programs, security cameras, lighting, safety apps, and emergency notification systems. Things like safe walk programs, sexual violence prevention websites and programs, safety and sexual violence prevention workshops, conferences and speaker series, assault prevention programs, and bystander, upstander training. And we are also investing an additional allocation of $1.35 million from 23-24 to 25-26 in a new Indigenous Institutes Campus Safety Grant to support the institutes in conducting a campus safety needs assessment and policy development, safety awareness and training programs for students and staff, including de-escalation and suicide prevention, campus safe walk programs, security cameras, and panic buttons. We pride ourselves on being a government that is responsive to the evolving needs of its people, and we know that issues as pervasive as sexual violence and harassment aren't addressed by quick fixes. That's why in August of 2021, following reports regarding sexual misconduct cases in post-secondary institutions, our government engaged with colleges, universities, private career colleges, and student groups to develop a plan of action to build on and expand our existing measures. Following these consultations, it was clear that there was more work to be done to ensure a safe learning environment for students. To that end, we introduced and unanimously passed, thanks to all the support of across the House, the Strengthening Post-Secondary Institutions and Students Act 2022, which requires publicly assisted colleges and universities, as well as private career colleges, to have specific processes in place that address faculty and staff sexual misconduct on campus, and to make these processes transparent. These processes include equipping institutions with stronger tools to address instances of faculty or staff sexual misconduct against students, like being able to dismiss a faculty member or staff who committed sexual misconduct toward a student, preventing the use of non-disclosure agreements, which can be used to hide the prior wrongdoing of an employee when they leave one institution for another, and requiring institutions to have employee sexual misconduct policies that outline rules of behavior between employees and students and contain examples of disciplinary measures for employees who break these rules. And this builds on regulations announced in 2021 that required all institutions to update their sexual violence policies to ensure they empower students to report acts of sexual violence without that student having to face any potential repercussions for violating the school's drug or alcohol policy. Bill 26 is survivor-centric and driven by consultations from over 100 members from across the post-secondary sector, consultations that made it clear more tools were needed to address matters of faculty on student sexual violence. I want to note that these have been well received by leaders in the post-secondary education sector and by students I've spoken to, with shows of support from the Council of Ontario Universities, Colleges Ontario, and Career Colleges Ontario. And across political lines, everyone was in favor of this. And I know everyone around this table is aware that this bill passed with unanimous consent. It should be noted that these measures make Ontario one of only 2 Canadian jurisdictions that require institutions to have policies requiring rules for behavior between faculty and staff and students who impose disciplinary measures on faculty or staff who break these rules. It's also important we acknowledge the many other factors at play in the context of ensuring campus safety. I'm proud to say that our government has taken definitive action to better support the inclusion, access, and success of more students at Ontario's post-secondary institutions. For example, my Ministry of Colleges and Universities engaged with the Premier's Council on Equality of Opportunity in March of 2021 to receive feedback from key stakeholders and advocates on how the government can better respond to accessibility challenges faced by underrepresented groups at our colleges and universities. And the insights garnered through that process is helping our government shape a better, more inclusive post-secondary system with many programs in place.
Thank you, Minister. We will now turn to the official opposition for the next round of 20-minute questioning. MPP Sattler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to continue on the theme of social housing or student housing. We've talked about that already today. And certainly, as the Minister pointed out, student housing is becoming a major concern of municipalities across this province. The official opposition met with more than two dozen delegations at the AMO conference in August and heard repeatedly about some of the pressures that municipalities are facing. They welcome colleges and universities in their communities as anchor institutions that are critically important for local economies, but they are facing financial stress because of the provincial underfunding of post-secondary education that has meant that many of the costs of post-secondary are being downloaded to municipalities, and that's particularly the case with student housing at a time when we are facing an unprecedented housing crisis in this province. Colleges and universities are finding it challenging to be able to allocate the funding necessary to build student housing. Students can't afford to pay rent. They're not getting the kind of support they need with OSAP or institutional bursaries, and are really struggling to be able to find somewhere to live. And in response to all this, we hear your government talk about carving up the green belt as the solution to the housing crisis in Ontario. So I'd like the minister to explain how the government's decision to sell off protected greenbelt land to well-connected developers.
Sattler, I'll remind you, please direct questions related to the estimates. Thank you.
Well, we have been talking about student housing as being part of the estimates, and the fiscal challenges that colleges and universities are experiencing because of underfunding. So my question is, the government's Greenbelt strategy that involves selling off protected Greenbelt lands to insider developers, how is that going to ease the housing crisis for Ontario post-secondary students?
MPP Martin.
Thank you, Chair. on a point of order, I don't really see how that has anything to do with the estimates of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, that question.
Unfortunately, MPP Statler, I will rule it out of order.
Okay, well, we have...
MPP Gates?
I appreciate that, except the minister, during her opening comments, mentioned the fact that's why our party is building 1.5 million homes, which includes the Greenbelt. So you brought it up in your statement, so therefore the chair should allow it, because it was her that actually raised the 1.5 million homes, which are tied to the Greenbelt, even though we know we don't need to build on the Greenbelt. So I disagree with your ruling.
MPP Pierre? Sorry if your hand down.
Just a point of order. The Ministry of Colleges and Universities doesn't fund student housing, and as such should not be a part of today's conversation.
Thank you.
We did hear... Sorry.
Go ahead, MPP Statler.
Thank you. We did hear the minister refer to new student residences that are being built at Carleton University. And what I understand from colleges and universities is because of the lowest per student funding in Canada, because of the ongoing financial pressures that universities are facing, they are hard-pressed to be able to build the housing that students need, and the cuts to student financial assistance have made it very difficult for students to afford paying the rent. But my question to the minister, a related question to the minister, since I can't ask about how the Greenbelt, selling off the Greenbelt is going to help Ontario students, my question is, what is the Ministry of Colleges and Universities planning to do this fiscal year, 23-24, to ensure that college and university students in the province can access decent, safe, and affordable housing while they are attending post-secondary?
Well, thank you, MPP Statler, for that question, and happy to talk about student housing because it is a priority, not just for my ministry, but across our whole sector. I earlier talked about the consultations that are underway. I talked about the colleges and universities being part of that, as well as municipalities, and then I got off track and didn't come back to tell you about the fact that we are having students as part of the consultations and roundtable, as well as some of the companies that are in the sphere of student housing development. So this isn't, it's an opportunity that some campuses have participated in that's not necessarily, sometimes it could be due to lack of space on campus to build new accommodations, but partnerships with private companies to build a student residence. So some of the campuses that I visited over the summer, I mentioned U of T Scarborough campus recently, and Carleton University in my opening remarks. I was also at the University of Windsor, where they're getting shovels in the ground to build a new student residence. A new student residence went online at Western University just this past couple of weeks. So, we're seeing it across the sector in universities and colleges and private career colleges as well. Making sure that there is adequate housing on or off campus for students. So there's more work to be done in this area, and I really think it is not just a responsibility of the provincial government, but also municipalities to step up and be part of that. And in that manner, I mean as far as accelerating student housing with the permitting process, and to not hold up these projects that are critical to our areas. Because as I said, colleges and universities are stepping up and taking the pressure off municipalities. So when colleges and universities are building student housing and making that a priority for them, it eases the burden on municipalities who need that housing or those rental spaces for residents who live in the area. So there is more work to be done, but the work that we're doing with the consultations, working with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the roundtables that will be coming, that will really working together to ensure that we're collaborating moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I'm going to get back to housing in a moment, but I want to ask some questions about international students. We saw two fairly recent reports from the Auditor General about the over-reliance of Ontario's post-secondary sector on international student fees. There was a report in December 2021 where the auditor said that Ontario colleges received 68% of their tuition fees from international students in the 2020 to 21 fiscal year. We know that there are many colleges that actually have more international students than domestic students, and the HESA report that I mentioned earlier, issued last week, found that students from just a single country, India, are contributing more to college revenue in Ontario than the government of Ontario, which is shocking. But in 2022, the auditor also found that international students are paying 45% of university tuition revenues, even though international students make up only 14% of the student body. So, with the academic year underway, can the minister tell us exactly what percentage of revenue for Ontario colleges this academic year is from tuition paid by international students, and what percentage of revenue for Ontario universities this academic year is from international student tuition?
Well, thank you, MPP Sattler, for the question. I'm going to ask the deputy to pull up that information, but before we get to that, because I don't have that right in front of me, I just wanted to talk about the world-class education system that we have here in Ontario, and that international students come here because of the education that's offered in Ontario. But it's the education, but also the job opportunities that are available. And I'm sure every one of us around this table can talk about the local labor market needs in our own communities. I know in mine, when I travel around the province visiting different communities, and I was with MPP Gates in his community about a month ago, meeting at the ribbon cutting for the new public-private partnership, and the programs that were going to be offered at that school that were meeting the local labor market needs for Fort Erie. But I think on top of that, one important thing that I took away is the student housing building that they're looking at doing. So it's a real partnership, and we know that's important. I'll get to the number. Sorry, I'm going to pass it over to the deputy because you have the breakdown in front of you.
Yeah, I just like those two specific breakdowns. What percentage of revenue for Ontario colleges in this academic year is from international student tuition, and the same for Ontario universities?
So thank you, MPP Sattler. Just for clarification, for 22-23, so we wouldn't have 23-24 yet, but 22-23. International tuition revenue represented 32% of total revenue.
In colleges
or in
universities?
Or in colleges. In colleges, yes.
In colleges?
Yeah. And then in universities, we do not have finalized data for 22-23. So for 21-22, in universities, it was 21%. International tuition represented 21%.
So how do you explain the discrepancy with what the Auditor General had reported in the 68% of Ontario colleges receiving, or that Ontario colleges received 68% of tuition fees from international students in December 2021? And the auditor had also found 45% for universities from international student tuition.
So just for clarification, what the number I provided you, 32% and 21%, were of all revenue sources. So are you asked just for clarity?
Tuition revenues.
Of tuition revenue.
Yes, of tuition revenues.
So I don't have the number in front of me, but my understanding is domestic tuition, this is in colleges, was roughly 11% of all revenue sources. So I'd have to do the math. And then on the university side, the domestic
So 89% international for colleges?
No, it would be roughly 2.2 of the 3 billion, roughly. And then on the university side, domestic tuition represented 22%. So roughly the same as international tuition, about 50-50%, is my understanding of tuition. Maybe I'll ask ADM Kelly Shields to provide any further clarification.
Kelly Shields, ADM of the Post-Secondary Education Division, and Deputy, that's correct in terms of the figures that you were citing.
Okay, thank you.
Speak into the mic a little more, sorry.
Oh. No, I was just saying that what the deputy had outlined, that's correct in terms of the most
So
recent information.
2.2% of $3 billion in revenues for colleges is from international student tuition?
2.2 billion of roughly $3 billion.
2.2 billion of
the
$3 billion is from
And-
international.
Right, and then on the university side, they're roughly, what I have is about 22% domestic tuition, or 3.6 billion from domestic, and 3.3 from international.
So almost
From
half in the university sector.
sector.
Okay, thank you. So clearly, universities and colleges have turned to international student tuition, both as, of course, as a means of strengthening our economy in this province, but also to deal with that funding shortfall that was created by the government when student tuition, domestic student tuition fees were frozen. And we know that international students can pay as much as 10 times more than domestic students for tuition. So that represents thousands and thousands of dollars that international students are contributing to the sector. We have heard the federal government float the idea of a cap on the number of international students entering Canada and hence entering Ontario. We are hearing about the possibility of another COVID wave, which could affect the number of international students coming to this province. And either of those things or other unexpected issues or events would have an immediate and drastic financial impact on Ontario's colleges and universities. So my question is, what is the ministry's plan to deal with the potential huge loss of revenue that would result if there is a decrease in the number of international students entering this province?
MPP Martin.
Thank you, Chair. On a point of order, I'm just wondering again if we're not doing estimates here, because the universities are institutions that have revenue sources of various kinds, as we heard. But we're supposed to be looking at the estimates of this ministry, so I'm not quite sure what a federal policy has to do with the estimates of this ministry, or if we have now gone outside of the purview of this committee.
Thank you, MPP Martin. MPP Sattler, you're walking an extremely fine line on your questioning. A lot of the things you mentioned in your last question is a federal responsibility. Minister, you have the opportunity to answer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, MPP Sattler, for the question. And yes, that is a federal matter, and no, I am not in favor of a cap. I think that international students strengthen our communities. We need students to come here. We need immigration in this province, and immigration through the pathway of education, I think, is fantastic. Students choose to come to Ontario. That's their choice. You talk about the tuition rates, yet Ontario's tuition for international students is still below countries like Australia, the U.S., and the United Kingdom. So students are making that choice to come study in Ontario, and we welcome them to our communities. We need them.
Yeah, but the sector is precariously balanced on international student tuition fees in order to be able to deliver post-secondary education in Ontario. We just heard how much of the tuition revenues for colleges and universities are made up of the fees that are paid by international students. So just in terms of looking at the overall financial stability and sustainability of the sector, I would hope that there would be some thought given by the ministry through the estimates process into anticipating a possible decrease in the number of international students, which could be caused by the federal government or things happening in other countries around the world, and the impact of that loss of revenue on Ontario's post-secondary sector.
For the question, MPP Sadler, and two things I would like to comment on addressing your question is the Blue Ribbon panel. So they are looking at international students and across the sector. So that will be one of the things that they have been consulting and hearing back from the sector. We'll be making recommendations on that as part of that report in the coming weeks. The other is looking at the long-term financial sustainability of colleges and universities. And we've done a lot of work in that area because we don't want to see another Laurentian University situation. So the ministry engaged a third party to provide advice on the design of a new financial accountability framework, which includes financial ratio metrics and target thresholds, risk ratings, and actions to be taken based on risk rating. The framework, developed with input from the third party, uses 8 core financial metrics or ratios and individual credit ratings to measure the financial health risk of universities and determine the appropriate course of action for both the ministry and the universities. The framework is going to be implemented in collaboration with the sector and will serve as an effective tool in identifying institutions experiencing financial challenges and allows for proactive corrective action before significant financial sustainability risks emerge.
Thank you. If I could just finish off the questioning about international student tuition. Is the ministry considering regulating international student tuition fees? And if not, why not?
Well, international student tuition is up to the universities and colleges are autonomous institutes.
But the ministry regulates domestic student tuition.
Yes, we do.
So is the ministry considering regulating international student tuition, and if not, why not?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you, MPP Sattler and Minister. We'll now go to the next round of questioning to the government members for 20 minutes. MPP Wyatt.
Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. And we understand students and the families and the taxpayers of Ontario deserve to know that their hard-earned dollars are invested into Ontario's post-secondary system. Their investment will pay off. And thank you for updating us and reminding us that we have the Blue Ribbon panel made up of experts and leaders from the business and academic communities. Can you please give us a little bit more information on the issues or recommendations you have heard from the sector that will be a priority moving forward, please?
Well, thank you, MPP Way, for that question. Students, their families, and the taxpayers of Ontario deserve to know that when their hard-earned dollars are invested in Ontario's post-secondary system, their investments will pay off. And unlike the opposition, our government respects every tax dollar and does not believe in piecemeal solutions. That is why we've launched the Blue Ribbon Panel, to consult with key stakeholders and provide tangible, long-term solutions that will keep our sector strong. Led by Dr. Alan Harrison, this panel is tasked with casting a wide net to look into how our sector can be more fiscally responsible, ensure education meets the needs of the labor market, all while maintaining the high-caliber education students have come to expect, among other key initiatives. The panel has been hard at work over the last several months, conducting research and consultations with key stakeholders, with their final report expected this fall. We are looking forward to receiving their recommendations on improving the financial sustainability of the sector while providing the best student experience possible. Laying the groundwork for the financial sustainability of the post-secondary education sector will protect it for current and future students, ensuring they can continue to receive world-class education provided by Ontario's post-secondary institutions. Because Ontario's post-secondary institutions are one of the most important economic engines of the province, and keeping them financially sustainable means keeping the province strong. That's why our government has taken every opportunity to support our institutions. Take the COVID-19 pandemic, for example. This was a challenging time for our institutions. With reduced on-campus services, enrollment declines and a decrease in investments and donations, there was a significant decline in post-secondary revenues based on circumstances outside of their control. And because of these circumstances, we had to act fast to help ensure the financial sustainability of the sector and provided $25 million as immediate relief for COVID-related expenses at the very onset of the pandemic in March of 2020. That support continued through 2021, when we made the largest COVID-related investment of any province into their post-secondary sector by offering $106.4 million to our colleges and universities to deal with the financial impacts of the pandemic. And this was immediately followed by another $5 million of relief to assist our colleges and universities in transferring in-person career services to the virtual environment in April of 2021. It was these supports that were integral to helping our institutions endure the financial difficulties of the pandemic and move the sector forward in a sustainable manner. But our support doesn't stop there. In 22-23, our government provided more than $5 billion in operating funding to the sector. That's $1.38 billion for colleges, an increase of $74 million since 2008-2009, and $3.65 billion for universities, an increase of $500 million since the same year. And even in an environment with declining enrollment, because of this government's corridor funding approach, we committed to providing each institution with the same level of funding regardless of how much their enrollment declines. Additionally, as a part of our tuition funding framework, we allowed institutions to raise their fees for certain programs where the current tuition fee is not aligned with the sector average, up to a maximum of 7.5% annually for incoming first-year students, ensuring their continued financial sustainability. These historic measures were also complemented by substantial capital grants to our colleges and universities. And for 2023-24, our government is investing $170.9 million in critical maintenance, repairs, and renewal to help colleges and universities ensure that their students, faculty, and staff have modern and safe learning environments. This builds on our funding starting in 2020-21 to invest $30 million every year for the last 3 years to help colleges and universities renew and purchase modern, state-of-the-art equipment that increases students' virtual access to post-secondary education programs to prepare students with skills for the in-demand jobs of today and tomorrow. These capital expenditures help take financial pressures off of our institutions, ensuring that they can sustainably grow into the future. Of course, proper financial oversight is always needed to ensure that the hard-earned dollars of Ontarians are translating into tangible benefits in the post-secondary sector. That's why in November of 2022, our government announced a new financial accountability framework for our universities, which uses publicly available information to measure their financial health risk, a crucial component in deciding whether an action plan is needed to remedy any concerns. We also use a similar framework for ensuring the financial health of our colleges by evaluating their internal financial data against 7 indicators, allowing us to proactively monitor their health and sustainability. And please know, we do this all with students in mind. I've traveled across the province and visited all of Ontario's publicly funded colleges, universities, and many private career colleges. And the one thing that stands out to me at our institutions, above the state-of-the-art facilities and beautiful campuses, are the students. Ontario's students are hardworking, adaptable, and have proven the future of the province is in good hands. With how much they support our province, they deserve an affordable, high-quality post-secondary education. With students as our top priority, in 2019-2020, we reduced tuition fees to 10% relative to 2018-2019 levels, providing an estimated $450 million of relief to our students. This was followed by a tuition freeze from 2020 to 2024, allowing us to reduce our fees to no longer being the highest in Canada. And remember, even with these historic achievements in tuition affordability, we have always continued to offer OSAP to students around the province. We're also investing over $70 million between 2020 and 2024 in Ontario's virtual learning strategy to support the needs of Ontario's post-secondary institutions, learners, and educators. This infrastructure has helped strengthen the province's position as a global leader in the post-secondary sector, bolstering the financial sustainability of our institutions. Together, these policies have helped make post-secondary education more affordable for all Ontarians while keeping growth at sustainable levels. Our post-secondary institutions and research institutes are important sources of job creation, skills training, research, innovation, and commercialization, making them leading contributors to our overall economic growth. By launching the Blue Ribbon Panel, which will help inform actions Ontario can take to protect and grow our post-secondary education system, learners can continue to get the skills and education they need for the jobs of today and tomorrow. As always, we will lean on our experts to provide thoughtful and independent advice to our government on what the future of post-secondary in Ontario should and can look like. We have long said that Ontario is the best place to get an education, but you can't be the best if you're not willing to put in the work to be better every day. Our government will continue to do what is best for students, their families, and of course the taxpayer, while our colleges and universities begin the next phase of prosperity and excellence domestically and around the world. And I look forward to seeing the results and how we can use them to build on the work we've done this far to support the sector.
Questions? Pierre. It's a long day.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, the pandemic really shone a light on mental health, and we know that post-secondary students are no exception. Can you tell us what initiatives and programs are in place to help college and university students with their mental health? And specifically, so what is the government doing to improve access to mental health for university and college students, and how we are continuing to support students with their mental health needs?
Thank you for that question, MPP Pierre. And as the PA to Ministry of Colleges and Universities, you have been instrumental in the work that you've been doing in this ministry, working with the colleges and universities and looking at the mental health supports that are offered around the campuses, what we currently have and what we can do to ensure that students continue to be supported. Some of the work that we have been doing, I'll talk about some of the programs that are offered on campus. We have the Good to Talk program, which is a post-secondary mental health helpline and represents a partnership among Kids Help Phone, Connects Ontario, 211 Ontario, and the Ontario Centre for Excellence in Child and Youth Mental Health. This helpline is available 24/7, 365 to all post-secondary students and provides live professional counseling, referral to community service providers, and information resources. In 2023, the ministry allocated a total of $11.82 million to Good to Talk over the next 3 fiscal years, 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25, to continue operations and for expansion-related activities. We also fund the Centre for Innovation in Campus Mental Health. And the Centre for Innovation in Campus Mental Health is a partnership between Colleges Ontario, the Council of Ontario Universities, the College Student Alliance, and the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. And the centre promotes knowledge exchange and facilitate access to expertise, fosters collaboration and research, and facilities initiatives to build institutions' capacity to meet the mental health needs of students. And a multi-year TPA with the Centre for Innovation in Campus Mental Health was signed this past June. We also fund the Mental Health Worker Grant, and this is in 2023-24, we funded $4.5 million. This grant supports publicly assisted colleges and universities in hiring direct service mental health professionals to help meet the needs of students. In 21-22, this grant funded a total of 207 positions and professionals for mental health supports at institutions. Top service categories included counselor services, which they hired 107, social workers hired 18, and hired 18 wellness workers. Other workers include peer supports, psychotherapy, medical support, and administrative support. And institutions reported a reduced pressure on campus-based services, shorter wait times, increased contact hours with students, and an overall better capacity to assist students in 21-22. On July 21st of 2023, grant allocations for institutions were announced for the 23-24 year. We also fund the Mental Health Services Grant, and this was $6.505 million in 23-24. Through this grant, the ministry assists colleges and universities in the development and/or expansion of post-secondary mental health services on campus. The types of the initiatives included mental health awareness and education, counseling therapies, specialized supports for identified at-risk groups, online and virtual supports, Indigenous-focused staff and programs, mindfulness and resiliency building programs, peer-to-peer supports, crisis intervention, suicide prevention, as well as other initiatives. In 2021-22, over 880 distinct services were developed, which serviced approximately 353,146 post-secondary students. Incredible numbers. This includes services targeted at students with disabilities and Indigenous students. We also fund the Indigenous Institute's Mental Health Grant, and this was $500 million in 23-24. Sorry, $500,000, 500,000. Funding is provided to the 9 Indigenous institutes for the provision of culturally relevant, trauma-informed mental health and wellness services, conducting a mental health needs assessment and/or strategic plan, and/or the hiring of mental health workers and cultural support staff, and/or planning and development of the new or expanded mental health and addictions worker or related programs. In 2019-2020, $0.35 million in funding was allocated to this grant, and this marked the first time that Indigenous institutes had access to dedicated mental health funding. In 2020-21, $500,000 in funding was allocated to this grant. In 21-22, $1.2 million in funding was allocated to this grant. We also fund the call for proposals, and the mental health call for proposals invites applicants to submit project proposals that address post-secondary student mental health. In 22-23, the ministry announced another round of the call for proposals, inviting publicly assisted colleges and universities to submit projects that focus on international student mental health, and 4 projects have been selected by the ministry and will receive funding for 1 year. This $2.64 million includes $2.25 million through the MOU with the Ministry of Health, and also $0.39 million in MCU-based funding. We also fund the Get Ahead program, which in 23-24 we funded $12.5 million. And this is an interesting and exciting online platform that can connect individuals in need of mental health support with counselor trainees in a peer-to-peer model. The goal of the platform is to enhance access to virtual mental health services while expediting the graduation of post-secondary students in mental health fields such as psychology and social work. In 23-24, through our multi-year planning, Treasury Board authorized an investment of $12.5 million in 23-24 in the Ministry of Colleges and Universities to support the expansion, the ongoing expansion of the Get Ahead platform. So we have a lot of great work going on at the campuses across Ontario, and I thank the PA for all your hard work. And I know it's been an exciting time for you as well, visiting the campuses and meeting not only with the staff and faculty that work with the students, but the incredible students. And I'm proud of the supports that we offer. I have 3 daughters who have been through are in the process of going through the post-secondary education system here in Ontario, and we want to ensure that students have access to the supports, whether in person on campus or virtual. And I think during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the need for virtual supports enhanced, but I think that was something that students were also have continued to access following the pandemic. That students like the accessibility of being able to pop online to do a counseling session with a mental health counselor, and also probably will access those systems more frequently when they're able to.
You have less than 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Just a quick question, really. I was excited to hear the announcement about the French language teacher education and training, and certainly there are a lot of people in my riding who are interested in having their kids educated in French and making the most of that. So we certainly need those teachers, I know. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the announcement, which I think was at the Toronto-based Université de l'Ontario Français, practicing my French, and about just about post-secondary institutions and how they're teaching French language education programs.
Oh, well, thank you, MPP Martin, for that question. And yes, last Thursday was an exciting day, not only for French teachers in Ontario, for the University of Ottawa and Université de l'Ontario Français, but for myself and Minister of Education and Minister of Francophone Affairs to, we hear in our communities, and as you mentioned in your community, a shortage of French teachers. I also have a Francophone community in my area, and I have frequently heard from them, and not only the French school boards, but also the English school boards who have a shortage of French teachers. So this was a great announcement where we announced 110 additional French language teachers. And Minister Lecce and Minister Mulrooney and I had an opportunity to meet with some of those students who are enrolled in the program and who are very excited about their futures. We were actually talking with one student, she was from Kenya, and she saw a couple of years ago, the announcement about the opening of the new Université de l'Ontario Français, and she said, I saw that.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sorry. We will now then go to the official opposition for 20 minutes. MPP Sattler.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to move on to the issue of performance-based funding. There has been research done in other jurisdictions that have moved to performance-based funding in the post-secondary sector. And that research has demonstrated that performance-based funding can have a negative impact on the quality of education, on research, because it prioritizes short-term private sector market needs above quality, equity, and long-term social benefits. So my question is, why is the ministry, after pausing, quite rightly pausing performance-based funding during COVID, why is the ministry proceeding with performance-based funding for year 4 of the strategic mandate agreements, possibly year 5 of strategic mandate agreements? And will the ministry reverse performance-based funding for the next round of strategic mandate agreements?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Sattler. I'd like to talk a little bit about what the metrics are that the SMA is looking at, because I know you said you're not in favor, but I think they're very favorable metrics that when that the taxpayers of Ontario deserve to see the transparency and know that their taxpayers' dollars are well spent. So the metrics are as follows. Employment rate in a related field, so a portion of graduates employed full-time in a related or partially related field to their program of study. The institutional strength and focus, a proportion of students in an identified area of institutional strength and focus. Graduation rates, when students go to school to graduate and to get a job. Community and local impact, the student population as a portion of local population. Institution-specific economic impact metric. Graduate employment earnings. experiential learning, so ensuring that students, not just in a classroom, they're actually hands-on learning and getting opportunities in their communities. So looking at the number and proportion of graduates who participated in at least one course with required experiential learning component, research revenue for universities and total revenue for colleges attracted from private sector sources, research and capacity, the federal tri-agency funding secured, so total and share, this is for the universities only, institution-specific apprenticeship-related metric for colleges only, and institution-specific skills and competencies-related metric. So the performance-based funding model was introduced in fall of 2020, and so it links a larger portion of provincial post-secondary operating funding to student and economic outcomes, making this province a national leader in performance-based funding. So for 2020 to 2025, the government has developed individual agreements for 45 publicly assisted colleges and universities. And this move will help students get the education, the skills, and experience that they need to find good jobs by ensuring that post-secondary institutions offer programs that align with local labor market needs. Institutions are reporting annually on indicators such as graduate employment, rates in related fields, experiential learning, and graduate employment earnings. And so by tying a portion of government funding to performance in the SMA framework, Ontario is encouraging institutions to focus on making sure that students and graduates have the real-world skills that they need to get rewarding careers. So on March of 24th of this past year, MCU announced the activation of performance-based at the system-wide portion of 10% in year 4 for 23-24, and to defer a decision on the activation of performance-based funding portion in year 5 for 24-25, pending the outcomes of the Blue Ribbon Panel. So I've mentioned here today several times about the work the Blue Ribbon Panel is doing with consultations, submissions across the sector, and we'll be looking forward to those recommendations moving forward.
I want to thank you for that response, Minister. I want to focus on two of the metrics of performance-based funding that you just referred to. So the first is around graduate employment rates, and we know from the Auditor General's report in actually two separate audits, one in 2021, one in 2022, that there are concerns about using graduate employment rate as a metric because it is outside the control of universities and colleges. And the auditor recommended that the ministry not use performance-based funding related to graduate employment because that metric is significantly influenced by external factors and the economy. So, as you have just told this committee, you have decided not to listen to the recommendation of the auditor. You've decided to start moving forward with that metric this year, possibly next year, which could result in a reduction of funding for colleges and universities that, as I have pointed out, are already very overextended because of the underfunding of the sector by your government, and their funding could be reduced for something that is largely outside of their control. So my question is, why did you choose to reject that recommendation from the Auditor General?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm going to ask my deputy.
Sure. So I will ask ADM Rachel Simeon to come talk a bit about the metric that you spoke about.
Thank you very much. Rachel Simeon, ADM of Data Research and Innovation. So we have heard institutions cite the idea that some of the metrics are beyond their control, and we saw those recommendations from the Auditor General, including related to graduate employment earnings, graduate employment outcomes, and the graduation rate. While student outcomes are generally affected by student characteristics, demographic and economic conditions, and prior educational experience, which is true, we do believe that institutions can influence those outcomes through their program offerings, admissions criteria, and creating connections to employers in the labor market. To support sustainability and mitigate risk related to the metric volatility of the performance-based funding model, there are a number of design features that support impacts that are outside of the control of institutions. Institutions are measured. These include the fact that institutions are measured and evaluated against themselves, meaning that a small institution like an Algoma is never going to be compared to a large institution like the University of Toronto. Additionally, institutions can weight the metrics by placing a greater emphasis on ones that they think they will perform well in or would improve on. And also, when we introduced the 10% activation, we introduced a stop-loss mechanism that will ensure any performance that falls below 95% of target achievement will be capped in terms of funding loss. So we believe that this is a balance that will support continued accountability without destabilizing the funding of the institutions.
Thank you for that answer. I want to move on to another metric that has been criticized by the Auditor General, and that is the community local impact of student enrollment, otherwise known as corridor caps. That metric gives schools a very narrow window for the number of funded domestic students that they can admit. The auditor, similar to the graduate employment metric, the auditor recommended the community local impact metric be changed. We know in the submission of the Council of Ontario Universities to the Blue Ribbon Panel that universities are receiving no provincial funding whatsoever for more than 20,000 Ontario students who are in Ontario universities because of the corridor cap. So my question is, why would the ministry want to limit the ability of Ontario students to enroll in Ontario's post-secondary programs?
Before I pass it back over to the deputy, I just wanted to comment that the NDP wants to increase tuition and increase programs without jobs, and we're going to stand by our students, our communities, and our local sectors to ensure that students are educated in fields that have rewarding careers following. If we, to be clear, if we don't point institutions to positive labor market outcomes, do you think it's okay for students to graduate after 4 years or 2 years education and not have any job perspectives? I'm going to pass it over to Deputy to talk more about the metrics.
So maybe I'll ask ADM Kelly Shields to come talk about the corridor funding model that you mentioned, MPP Sadler, if that's okay.
Kelly Shields, ADM of the Post-Secondary Education Division. Through the SMA process, when it comes to enrollment funding, there is a base amount of funding that's provided to all institutions, and anyone that goes above their midpoint or their quarter of what we've agreed to fund, that is an institution's choice. As you know, they don't receive funding for that. The only time that funding would be provided if there's an agreement with the government. So, for example, in nursing programs, paramedics, there has been funding provided for increased enrollments, similar with the personal support workers. But otherwise, the way the model works is there's an agreed upon enrollment level, and that's what we work within. And there's also a band that also, if institutions fall below their agreed upon amount, we do have some thresholds where there's some stability for them as well. So it's on the downside as well in terms of the core operating grant.
Thank you for those responses. I do want to make clear that my question was around the recommendations of the Auditor General to change those metrics, but I appreciate the response about how those metrics work. And I also want to clarify for the Minister that the NDP is very interested in ensuring that our post-secondary sector is funded appropriately, and the ongoing underfunding by the provincial government with a shift from publicly funded colleges and universities to publicly assisted colleges and universities with private interest, private student tuition making up more and more, a larger share of the funding that the revenues that the institutions receive. That is a huge concern. We want to make sure that students are able to attend post-secondary institutions, and we have pushed the government to make up the huge revenue hole that they created for colleges and universities when they introduced the freeze, the reduction, and then the freeze on student tuition. That is what we have been calling for the government to do, to fund that revenue gap that was created at the time of the government's policy decision. But I want to move on to some questions about public-private partnerships, and the minister has talked at several times throughout the questioning today about the government's moving ahead with public-private partnerships. And just as with performance-based funding, there is a lot of research that has been done in other jurisdictions that have gone with public-private partnerships. We have seen the negative consequences of public-private partnerships right here in Ontario. But the government has consistently dismissed criticisms and warnings that have been received from experts about the risks that are associated with public colleges partnering with private providers who use the college's name to offer programs that are delivered by the staff of that private provider, not the faculty of that college. And these so-called campuses end up being operated by the private partner, not by the college. It is clear, once again, going back to that chronic and ongoing underfunding of our college and university system, that the major impetus behind these partnerships is the need for additional revenues to be able to deliver education, or maybe even just to keep the doors of the main campus open. So, Minister, do you not see it as problematic that our public institutions are effectively, in many cases, being forced to enter into these partnerships, which then exposes those institutions to risk just because of financial desperation with the ongoing underfunding of the sector?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Sadler. Lots to get to in that question, but I'll start off with the value of private career colleges. We look back to the pandemic. Private career colleges offered the PSW program at an accelerated rate. When we needed PSWs in every corner of this province, private career colleges stepped up and ensured that training. They play such an important role. And they are an opportunity for students, not just international students, but domestic students who are looking to, and I find a lot of cases, mature students who are looking to, upskill or to change their career, that they're able to enter through a private college. I just wanted to go back and give you some information on the work that we have been doing to ensure that students entering into a private college are protected, whether it's through the private college or through a partnership with a public college. So the Public College Private Partnership Ministry's binding policy directive was first released in December of 2019. And it applies to the 24 publicly assisted colleges and sets out requirements for public college private partnerships. Since the release of the directive, 9 colleges, Algonquin, Fanshawe, Fleming, Georgian Loyalist, Mohawk, Niagara, Sioux, and Sheridan, have received the necessary approval to establish new partnerships, and La Cité is currently approved. 6 colleges, Cambrian, Canadore, Lambton, Northern, St. Clair, and St. Lawrence, had existing PCPPs prior to the release of the directive. In November of 2021, the minister provided direction to proceed with a review of the directive and the associated stakeholder engagement plan. The ministry consulted with stakeholders in early 2022. This past March, the ministry released a revised directive after a review of the system, which includes several new and updated requirements for colleges entering into these types of arrangements. These include a private career public partnership enrollment ceiling of 7,500 students for each college that replaces the 1-to-2 enrollment ratio. Implementation of compliance measures, including financial penalties to enforce the enrollment ceiling starting this fall. A requirement for colleges to be responsible for all recruitment, admission, and enrollment decisions and not delegate responsibility for those decisions to their third-party partners. A requirement for colleges to establish procedures to conduct regular reviews to ensure ethical, international student recruitment practices. A requirement for colleges to report issues or complaints received in relation to its PCPP that have the potential to have significant negative impact on public-private partnership students, as well as the actions being taken to address them. A requirement for colleges to consult every 2 years with the local communities in which these partnerships are operated. A requirement for colleges to publish key performance indicators in relation to all students enrolled in partnership programs. And colleges may no longer enter into the public college private partnership for the delivery of programs in another province or territory of Canada. So this, we do take this very seriously. We want to ensure that students are protected when they're entering into any of our post-secondary institutions.
Thank you for that response, Minister. I want to refer you to a report that was provided to the previous government in 2017 by David Trick, and he warned against public-private partnerships in the post-secondary sector for a number of reasons: the potential for lower quality student learning experience, poor access to student services and supports for students with disabilities, lack of accountability to students, subpar facilities, and many more. So my question is, what is your government doing to track the negative impacts of public-private partnerships in our post-secondary sector?
Well, thank you for the question. And as I just mentioned, the updated requirements of the revised directive that was released this past March. So, looking at the requirement for colleges and colleges to establish procedures to conduct regular reviews to ensure ethical treatment of students. A requirement for colleges to report issues or complaints received in relation to its partnerships that would have potential negative impacts on the students. And a requirement for colleges to consult every 2 years with the local communities that in which the partnerships are operated. So, student supports are very important with these partnerships and ensuring success for all students. But the work that we're doing with the public and private partnerships is important for our communities. It's also important for local labor market needs and for the needs for these students to graduate into high demand jobs in those areas.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, MP Sattler. We will now go to the government side for the next round of 20 minutes of questioning. Anyone? Okay. MP, last call. Okay. I will now turn it to the official opposition for the next round of 20 minutes of questioning. MPP Sattler, I'm assuming.
Thank you very much. I now want to turn to a discussion around faculty and staffing in Ontario's post-secondary institutions. For some time now, Minister, we have seen contract faculty carrying the majority of the teaching load in Ontario's public universities, and the latest available data shows us that it is actually greater than 50% of the teaching load is taught by contract faculty. These professors, these faculty members have no job security. They have minimal benefits, and students are the ones who are affected by this because of they have contract faculty who are going from institution to institution, picking up a sessional here, a sessional there, and it is often very difficult for students connect with their professor if they need assistance after the class. So my question is, does the government have plans to address the precarious staffing situation that we see in Ontario's universities and engage in faculty renewal across the sector? I should clarify that it's not just a university problem. It is also what we are seeing more and more in the college sector as well. So what are the plans for dealing with this increase in contract faculty across the sector?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Sattler. And before I defer to my Deputy Minister, I just wanted to comment. Prior to politics, I was a faculty member at Georgian College, and I was one of those faculty members who was on contract and held multiple contracts in my time while I was at the college. But, universities and colleges are autonomous institutions and make those decisions on their own. But I'm going to defer to the Deputy.
And I will ask ADM Kelly Shields to provide support to that.
ADM Kelly Shields, Post-Secondary Education Division. As the Minister notes, all of the academic decisions such as hiring and the type of complement of faculty is solely within the purview of our colleges and universities, so we don't have a direct role in that, but thank you for sharing what you've heard, and that's helpful to know. As we continue, working with our sector, I mean, that's something that we can certainly raise with them. But as I again noted, we, as a ministry, don't have, responsibility over that, and it's up to our institutions to determine their hiring and their complement of staffing.
So there are no plans to address, to have a faculty renewal strategy across the sector. Okay. We know from Stats Canada that there is data about post-secondary education teaching staff, but that data is limited to full-time staff with appointments of longer than 12 months. So that data excludes staff who are there on contract or on term appointments. So this does not provide a clear picture of staffing in our public institutions. And while you've just said that you have no intention to look at faculty renewal across the sector, I'm wondering if the minister could at least commit to collecting more fulsome data so we can get a more accurate picture of staffing in post-secondary institutions, and then making that data publicly available.
Well, thank you for the question. And no, I'm not committing to that at this time, as the Deputy and myself and the ADM have already commented that institutions are autonomous and are responsible for the hiring of faculty on their own.
Okay. So we know that across the sector, it's not just within the teaching faculty complement that there are staffing challenges. It is also the underfunding of the sector that I have talked about today has led to a significant increase in contracting out within the sector and the loss of good service and trades jobs, which has a direct negative impact on local communities. Colleges and universities are also struggling to attract and retain skilled trades employees due to lower wages compared to other public sector institutions. So while the government is signaling on the one hand that skilled trades are supported, the continued underfunding in post-secondary education is leading to a reduction of skilled trade workers employed at our post-secondary institutions. Can the minister tell us if there is a plan to support skilled trades within post-secondary institutions, including instituting apprenticeship programs?
Well, thank you for the question. And, I can tell you that 85% of skilled trade workers are trained at Ontario's colleges. And, I've had the opportunity to visit all of the colleges and also to meet with many of the skilled trades programs and see the incredible work that those students and those faculty are doing. And we all know we need skilled trade workers across the province, whether it's building our roads and hospitals and schools. Their work is valued. And I can tell you, when I came to this place in 2018 and received the private members bill draw and saw that I was number one and had about 2 weeks to get something together, I did a motion calling on the government to look at skilled trades as a priority. Having grown up in a skilled trades family, I know the benefits of being a skilled trade worker and the benefits to your community, high-paying jobs, and ensuring that this province is built. So, we don't have a strategy in place working with colleges on a skilled trades partnership with faculty, but I do recognize the benefit. And I'm excited when I visit the schools now and I hear them talking about actual wait lists for students to get into trades programs. There's obviously the talk that everybody has been talking is working. Students are getting the message, and whether it's parents, guidance counselor, the people in those young kids' lives, getting that message across that these are fantastic, rewarding careers. It is now playing out in colleges and seeing more and more students signing up for these programs.
Right. But the students who are graduating from those skilled...
MPP Gates, yes?
Just to answer that, I know I haven't said much during this because she's the critic, but I toured Niagara College with my colleagues, Jeff and Jenny Stevens, just about 6 weeks ago. And their programs are busting at the seam, which is all good news. But the reality is that they're underfunded. They don't have the money to expand those programs because there is that need. So their message, if I got a chance to talk today, and I just got that chance, that to relay that message to you, that the colleges need more funding for the skilled trades program so they can expand the program. They got an incredible, I don't know if you've been there yet to Niagara College, incredible what they do there. They tear houses down, they put them back up, and then they sell them out. So they're getting all kinds of trades. So my suggestion is please put in your notes to contact Niagara College and see what type of funding they need so they can expand the program. So the program is working, but they need more support, they need more funding. So I just wanted to say that with that question as well. So thanks.
No, I appreciate that comment, and actually that was the school I was referring to when I first heard about waitlist, was in the plumbing program, and they have their new plumbing building there. Yep. And already students are on wait lists because they're so interested in the program. So you said it's good to see on one hand that they're filling up and the students are getting that message. That
Can you see this? Can you see this? That's what they need. They need money. Okay? Thank you.
MPP Sattler.
Yeah, and just to get back to my original question, one of the realities is that colleges and universities themselves are not able to hire skilled trades workers because we are seeing increasing contracting out because of the constant underfunding of post-secondary education. So I appreciate the question from my colleague as well about the skilled trades programs within our colleges. But actually, sort of carrying on from what my colleague said about programs that are bursting at the seams. I have a question about capital funding for Ontario colleges. And my understanding is that capital funding for colleges is not based on need, or why is it not based on need when we have such discrepancies in terms of levels of deferred maintenance and repair at Ontario's post-secondary colleges?
Well, thank you for the question. I'll just give a kind of a breakdown on the numbers for the capital programs at colleges and universities. In 23-24, the facilities renewal program was $170.9 million. in 23-24, the College Equipment and Renewal Fund, which is specifically to what you were asking, is $20 million. The Training Equipment and Renewal Fund is $10 million, and the Capital Support Program of $0.2 million. I just wanted to talk a bit about what we call it SURF and TURF. SURF is the College Equipment Renewal Fund. The types of equipment or investments that can be made through that funding. It's an ongoing program that supports colleges to buy and renew instructional equipment and learning resources. And this helps colleges deliver relevant, high-quality education and training that meets the evolving needs of employers and supports Ontario's economy. SURF was designed to ensure colleges have the most up-to-date, hands-on technical equipment needed to train college students to be prepared for the ever-changing labor market. This investment recognizes today's rapid pace of technological change and helps ensure college students are trained using the latest software, equipment, and machinery that is used by industry today. Deputy, would you like to add to the SURF?
Sure. So just on the SURF, the allocation of $20 million, the ministry will distribute $10 million of this funding through public colleges using an enrollment formula, and the remaining is distributed on a competitive...
Deputy Minister, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. $10 million will be distributed through an enrollment-based formula to publicly assisted colleges in Ontario using that formula. This guarantees that all colleges will have a minimum level of funding to buy and renew instructional equipment and learning equipment used by students. The remaining $10 million in funding is being distributed through a competitive applications-based process. Projects are submitted for approval under the program under the program need to show a matching financial or in-kind commitment and a clear link to industry needs and anticipated benefits. So I'll stop there. Maybe I'll just add on the funded facilities renewal program that the minister talked about. It's to help colleges and universities renew and modernize their campuses. It provides funds to repair, renovate, and modernize existing facilities owned by colleges and universities, which are used for academic, that is, teaching or research purposes. They can use the funds from the facilities renewal program for projects that support renewal and modernization of campuses, including major building system upgrades, roof repairs, heating and ventilation system upgrades, and mechanical and electrical systems upgrades. Funding provided by the program is intended to supplement the institution's own capital renewal program activities.
Just on, Chair, just on the issue of capital funding for colleges and universities, does the ministry have a specific plan to help colleges and universities deal with the impact of climate change? We are not only in a housing crisis in this province, but in a climate crisis. And there could be many of our institutions could be at risk of the severe weather impacts and other climate impacts that we are seeing across Ontario.
No, thank you for the comment, and it's actually up to the colleges and universities to spend that money as they see fit. So I can't specifically say it would be used towards climate change. I know in some of the capital projects I've seen on campuses where they're, trying to make the building energy efficient. That's some of the work that they're doing on their own, but not something that we direct from the ministry.
So there's no specific funds allocated to help post-secondary institutions sort of prepare for the impacts of climate change?
No, they would spend their money as they see fit.
It would just be they'd apply to the general fund. And can you tell us what is the overall amount that would be in the maintenance backlog that is currently reported at universities, colleges, and Indigenous institutes across Ontario?
So are you asking how much we're investing?
No. What are colleges, universities,
and
Indigenous institutes telling you that they need to deal with deferred maintenance and repair and capital needs?
I'm going to defer it to the deputy, who I think is deferring it to the ADM.
Yeah, so I'll ask ADM Kelly Shields to come forward.
Yeah. ADM Kelly Shields, Post-Secondary Education Division. The current deferred maintenance backlog at colleges is $1.2 billion, and at universities it's $5.1 billion. So a total overall college and university sector deficit of $6.3 billion. I know you asked about Indigenous institutes. I don't have that figure handy, but we've been working closely with that sector as well in terms of helping them to address their needs. We've supported them to do facility audits and to come up with their deferred maintenance figures and supporting them. We now have a new capital facilities renewal program for Indigenous institutes that's been put in place.
Okay, sorry, you said 1.2 billion deferred maintenance in colleges, 1.5 billion deferred in universities?
1.2 in colleges, 5.1 billion in universities. So 5.1.
Oh, 5.1 in universities.
And so
okay.
a 6.3 billion overall deferred maintenance backlog.
Okay, and how much is currently available for in the renewal fund that institutions can apply for?
I just have to get back to my place in my note here. Under the facilities renewal program for 23-24, 170.95 million is being invested.
So they are looking at a $6.3 billion deficit in deferred maintenance and repair, and they're able to tap into a $170.9 million capital. 170.9 million. A cap. What it was
fund.
Yes,
the fund is available
to deal with the $6.3 billion deficit across the sector.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Does the minister, in light of the $6.3 billion deficit, do you feel that a facilities renewal fund of $170.9 million is sufficient to support the sector in addressing some of these capital and maintenance needs?
Thank you. We work closely with the sector, but again, schools are autonomous institutes, and they make decisions on their spending with the amounts that they receive. So I would just leave it at that.
Okay, how much time do I have?
You have 1:35.
Okay, I'm going to just go back for a moment to the Blue Ribbon panel, which you spoke at some length, Minister, in your introductory remarks and also throughout your answers today. I think that certainly we've heard the ministry is putting a lot of weight on the report of that Blue Ribbon panel. You have indicated that for some decisions are going to be waiting until that panel reports back. So my question is the ministry committed to making the report of the Blue Ribbon panel public when it is presented to the ministry?
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Sadler, and I have spoke at length about it many times today in many questions, because it is very relevant to the future of the post-secondary sector and the financial sustainability and ensuring that we continue to have the best post-secondary education possible. I am committed to working with the sector on the recommendations that will follow, and we're hoping to have those within the next couple of weeks. But I'm proud of the work that not only the panel has done.
And will the report be made public?
Yes, the report will be made public.
Okay, as soon as you've received it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, MPP Sadler. Minister, government members, you have 10 minutes. MPP Pierre.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. I'd like to continue the conversation about how the government is adapting to address workforce needs. So you spoke earlier about the Ontario Learn and Stay grant and how the government has launched this new and innovative grant that provides upfront funding for post-secondary students who enroll in the first year of an eligible nursing, paramedic, or medical laboratory technologist program in a priority community, and then agree to work back in that community for a term of service after they graduate, and then have their tuition and living costs, books fully reimbursed. And then you also spoke about the expansion of medical undergraduate and postgraduate seats, as well as the creation of a new medical school in Brampton. Curious about veterinary colleges and what the government is doing to help with animal health care. And so wondering if you could just take a couple of minutes and talk about that.
Great. Thank you, MPP, for that, our MPP Pierre, for that question. It is very exciting. We're not only increasing healthcare opportunities for humans, but also for our fuzzy and feathered friends, too. And I look back to 2021 when I was appointed to this ministry, and I was at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, and I also have a Lakehead campus in Aurelia, but we were in Thunder Bay, and we were sitting in the big boardroom, and they said, you know, we want to bring a vet school to Lakehead. What do we do? And at the time, it seemed like an exciting, great opportunity, and I said, I don't know how we do it, but let's do it, because this is important. And so working with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs, and hearing the need for vets in Northern Ontario. And when I was at AMO last year, I was talking with a mayor from Red Lake, and he was telling me that people in his area were driving up to 2 hours to access veterinary needs for their animals. And that's just, you know, dogs and cats, not let alone vets who are working, large animal vets who are traveling, you know, a couple of hours and have literally hundreds of farms on their roster. And the need for that is so huge in Northern Ontario. So the program that we are doing is a combination with Lakehead University and Guelph University. It'll be 2 years at Lakehead and Thunder Bay, followed by 2 years at Guelph University, with a return to Northern Ontario after graduation. So kind of a hybrid model where these students will be working together with the students at Guelph at the same time through the first 2 years, and then coming together for the third and fourth year. But I know in people I've heard were having to travel to, you know, students going to Ireland to become vets, and not necessarily returning home. And we want to ensure that we have adequate access to the students here in Ontario to access veterinary medicine, but also graduating more vets that are going to stay here in Ontario in some of those priority communities. So this is almost a $15 million investment to veterinary medicine in Ontario. So very exciting for new vet students, for the universities themselves to have this collaboration, I think is fantastic. But also for the agricultural community to ensure that we have healthy animals on farms. But I think, you look at the spin-off from that as well. Colleges are going to be looking at offering vet tech programs. You can't have vets without having the staff that go in those offices as well. But it's going to be a win-win for all, and I'm very excited about it.
MPP Jordan, you have 5 minutes.
Minister, I want to congratulate your ministry on working with other ministries, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Long-Term Care. Healthcare resources, as you know, have been a huge challenge. What I have found going around the province and visiting long-term care homes as PA is staffing levels are greatly improved. In fact, a lot of long-term care homes are no longer relying on agencies to fill their regular shifts. So I want to congratulate you on that. I'm wondering if you could comment on your ministry's plans going forward for healthcare resources.
Well, thank you for the question, MPP Jordan. Thank you for the comment, too. It's nice to hear. Sometimes we hear doom and gloom all the time, but to hear that you're actually seeing positive changes in staffing at long-term care is quite exciting, because we look back in the past couple of years and what long-term care homes had to face during COVID was a difficult time, and in all of our communities needing more PSWs, more RPNs, more registered nurses, and there's this seems to be a renewed energy around students wanting to enter into health human resources in this province, and we're seeing record number of students who are registering for nursing programs at Ontario's colleges and universities. I was very excited, and this was prior to my time in the ministry, when they announced the new standalone degrees for nurses at colleges. So there was a time where students had to do 2 years at a college, then 2 years at a university to complete their degree before they graduated. I can tell you in my own community, students would attend Georgian College for 2 years, then they would leave and go to York University for 2 years, and they do their clinical placements in the big city, and they never came back, or very few of them came back, and we faced those shortages in our area. With the announcement, and it was exciting for me to be able to announce at Georgian College when they were able to offer the new standalone degree that this was going to be great for students to be able to access education closer to home and to complete that education in the same area where they started, but also for our long-term care homes, our hospitals, our community organizations to have access to staffing in their area. So, the work that we've done with the standalone degrees, I think, has been instrumental across the province. Literally, every college is almost there to offer the standalone degrees. So, very exciting. The work we did with the PSW Challenge, and I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about the private career colleges, how they were able to accelerate training for PSWs. And we had a challenge fund a couple of years ago where we challenged the publicly funded colleges as well as the private colleges to train 8,000 PSWs. And our sector really stepped up and trained students and helped fill those needs. And I had a chance to talk with some of the students who were in the program. Students who, I remember one gentleman in particular, he was a bylaw officer and was taking the program at Six Nation Polytechnic. And he wanted a career change. And he said, I came here to do the PSW program because it was free education. But not only for that reason, he said there was other opportunities to then move into being an RPN or a registered nurse as well. So that stepping stone in the healthcare field has been very important. And the work that we have done with Ministry of Health, the Ontario Learn and Stay grant, it was to think back when we were having those initial discussions about what this program would look like, and then to see the actual excitement of the students come through and have more than double the students that we projected in the beginning signing up for this program. And as I also mentioned earlier, one of our colleagues, he told me his daughter applied and she was accepted at UWindsor, and I said, okay, well, the next step is she needs to apply for Learn and Stay. And she did. So, her and over 4,000 other students will be filling those needs in our communities. But it will be a very fluid program. We'll work with other ministries on where the demands are, working with the communities and with the colleges and the universities to ensure that the training is possible to help in some of those underserved areas, in some of those high-demand programs that are coming. So I think we're doing lots of great work in the Ministry of Colleges and Universities, and I love it when the Premier talks about all these companies that are coming to Ontario. They're coming here because of the skilled workers that we have here and the world-class education that we can offer to employees and future employees. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, this concludes the committee's consideration for the 2023-2024 estimates of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. Standing Order 69 requires that the Chair put, without further amendment or debate, every question necessary to dispose of the estimates. Are the members ready to vote? Shall the vote 3001 Ministry Administration Program carry? No. Carried. Shall vote 3002 Post-Secondary Education Program carry? No. Carried. Shall vote 3005 Research Program carry? No. Carried. Shall the 2023-2024 estimates of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities carry? No. Carried. Shall the Chair report the 2023-2024 estimates of the Ministry of Colleges and Universities to the House? Yes. Carried. Thank you, and we will now recess to 4:15 as Minister Cho and them come.